Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm here with Doc. Doc, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, and to all the fellow werewolves out there, haroo, haroo.
So before we get into our topic, let's do a little bit about Halloween. You love Halloween. I'm celebrating Halloween. Do you have any fun Halloween stories when you were a kid, like trick-or-treating, costume parties?
Yeah.
Give me a fun Halloween story to break the ice.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this lately because I was reading the story. As a kid, I did a cool Halloween dress up. I was Mr. Hyde from Curious Case of Dr. Jekyll, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And so my dad was a big videographer. This is in the 90s, right? So he has like giant VHS type recording stuff. My dad would just do fun videos of us as kids, and he'd like put music over it. And this was all before computers, dear listeners. So this was all done like on VHS tapes. So my dad was a turbo boomer in the best of ways and was like big into the VHS world. And he did like this cool, gosh, I don't know if that movie still exists. He did a home movie where it was me like as Dr. Jekyll, and I was like in my room, and we had like a dry ice going, like I was doing some sort of experiment. And then he videoed me after I had like the costume on and the makeup, and I was Mr. Hyde and I was going crazy. And so that was probably the single greatest Halloween costume I ever did as a kid, but it was awesome. So yeah.
I've never read the actual story, but when I was growing up, I so in Orlando, there's the Orlando Shakespeare Theater, which is now unfortunately called Orlando Sakes. It hurts.
Yeah,
it
whatever.
Hurts so much.
Yeah,
but whatever. Yeah, but they used to do these. If you were part of a school group, you get super cheap tickets. So the homeschool groups would organize these things, and so I would go see. I saw Caesar, I saw Hamlet. I saw a bunch of great performances. And funny enough, I went and saw Caesar, and Mark Antony was played by Michael Dorn, Worf from Star Trek.
Epic.
It was incredible. But they did a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde performance, and I remember it disturbed me so much. And
it's a disturbing story. I recommend the story to. Speaking of dark whimsy, I respect the story, and I do suggest the story to every single person who's listening. It's a short read, and it's very incredibly unsettling as a book. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's the way that it has been. I'm assuming the stage production was very similar in many ways to some of the film productions, in that the film productions show you what's going on, but in the story, it's all suggested by the strange, like people don't actually see what's going on until the very end, and so they're just seeing like Mr. Hyde's effects that he wreaks upon the world. It's very unsettling, so I recommend the story.
I'll have to give it a read. I've never. Yeah. I need to read it because I do love the concept of the character and everything he pops in. Van Helsing, the new Mummy film with Tom Cruise. Every time he pops in something, I'm like, man, that sounds a cool concept for a character.
Well, and Robert Louis Stevenson was Scottish, and so was at least culturally very Calvinist, right? Mm-hmm. And he actually wrote about what he had a nursemaid when he was growing up who helped raise him, because he was from a family that was a little bit higher, right, in terms of affluency. They weren't like super totally rich, but they had like nannies and such.
Yeah.
And apparently he was largely raised by this woman who was like of the peasant class and had like all of the folklore and all of the stories of various goblins and witches and stuff. And so this like terrified him as a child. And so it's no big surprise that he writes this story with a terrifying character who is himself two characters, spoiler, right? And what I have read, at least, is that the book, and this is the most Calvinist thing to say ever, but the Book of Romans inspired Robert Louis Stevenson to write that story. Wow. That Paul's meditation on the duality of man and why is it that we do what we don't want to do, right? Like, why do we sin when we don't want to sin? What is this about sin that is so enticing, so appealing? That had played a huge role in influencing the way that Stevenson wrote the story. So it is in many ways an example of, I would say, Christian and definitely, or maybe more specifically, Calvinist horror. The horror of the unrepentant side of you, right? Can you overcome this part of you that is just addictive?
There really is a strong horror-esque through line through a lot of Christian. I feel like it's like I did a podcast this morning and I said the scariest line ever written was "Depart from me, for I do not know you." That is the scariest line ever written.
Yeah,
And
amen. Yeah.
real serious whole line, through line through Christian theology, whether it is the Belloc wrote this great poem, a Christmas poem that's very spooky, which is great because I think spooky Christmas stuff is incredible. So, was it Charles Dickens who did? Not Charles Dickens. Was it Dickens who did a Christmas?
It's Dickens. Yeah, it's very it's very English to do spooky stories during Christmas. Yeah, the whole spooky stories during the fall is an Irish and then by Scottish and Irish and by exportation an American phenomenon because of the huge amount of Scotch Irish and then later Irish influx into America. So yeah, Halloween is a hodgepodge holiday, but in England itself, really Christmas time is the ghosty time of year. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, in the poem, Belloc, he's in the woods and he sees a traveling group of wise men and shepherds with no shadows going to Bethlehem, and he is terrified to join them because he might see our Lord and Savior, and that's the whole element of it. And it's such a great Christmas poem. It has such a great spookiness to it. I'll send you a link to it later because it's one of my favorite Belloc poems. But whimsy. So I want to give a little preamble for what kind of inspired this conversation from a previous conversation as a kind of like lay the groundwork, and then we'll start exploring the term what we term dark or gothic whimsy.
Sounds good.
So you and I were podcasting on D.K. Chesterton's Running After One's Hat, and I told the story of when I was in Canada. There was a major car accident between two semi trucks and another car that caught fire. And we sat there for a good hour or so, and I started just chatting up the Canadians as we all got out of our trucks, all got out of our cars and climbed the nearby hill to get a better view. And I said, I don't know about y'all, but I kind of want to see a body when we get up there. I want to see the devastation. I want a reward for my patience for waiting through this. And they were so taken aback and shocked by this. And like, that's such an American thing to say.
That's not a Canadian thing to say. Yeah, that's very American. No. Yeah.
And you had the observation of the frontiers days. If you were traveling and you saw an abandoned wagon train, you had to investigate for bite marks, starvation, or arrowheads to see what kind of troubles laid before you. And that is that kind of wanting to see the devastation after the accident is a cultural carryover from frontier days.
Yep.
And that kind of sparked the idea that when Europeans are in the woods, they see gnomes, they see fairies, goblins. When Americans are in the woods, it's alien abductions, Bigfoot, and skinwalkers.
Yeah, or Wendigos, right?
Wendigos was scared of. Anyone listening, the Supernatural season 1, episode 2 episode on the Wendigo is an incredible episode. The Wendigos are really cool.
There's some Algernon Blackwood, the British, really English ghost story writer, wrote some really good stuff about. He spent a lot of time in Canada, despite being English, but it was the British Empire still at that point, and so he went and spent a good amount of time in Canada and wrote some really spooky stuff about Wendigos as well. So yeah, Wendigos are a kind of an underrated monster, but they are. But North Americans, let's say, including Canadians probably, right, are also kind of afraid about the beasts of the woods. They don't tend to be cute little. I mean, of course, there's beasts of the woods in Europe, right? But a lot of times the supernatural creatures are kind of a little bit more chaotic neutral or just true neutral, right? Like they're maybe not always going to try to kill you. You maybe have to outsmart the leprechaun, right? You have to.
The scariness of the fairy wasn't that it's guaranteed to kill you. It's that it was so strange and other you had no idea what it was going to do.
Right. Whereas in America, it's like anything that lives in the woods probably will just tear your guts out and eat you while you're alive. So that's the American kind of. It is interesting because we, if I can jump, if you're ready for me to just jump into it,
go right ahead.
Yeah, this is it's interesting I'm just chilling with a good friend of mine here. Hopefully people are enjoying it. But
around the campfire,
with
the crickets going and the owls in the distance.
Yeah, to put my professor hat on for 2 seconds, or at least my academic hat. This is it's very interesting. This is what I love about North American folklore. Is because you really clearly see the blending and the harmonization of European donor material, right? Like, so all of the monsters and things that people believed when they came over here, meaning European people, right? And then the encounter with a landscape that is beautiful but bizarre. Just drive through Utah, and you know what I mean. It's beautiful and bizarre. That's weird.
Wisconsin is my go-to example.
Where?
Wisconsin. That's my go-to
Wisconsin.
example.
Yeah. Wisconsin.
The woods there are The woods there terrified me when I drove
Yeah.
through Wisconsin. The woods are terrifying.
It's beautiful, but it's also scary. And then also, obviously, a myriad of very different cultures who themselves had been at war for centuries, millennia. Let's us not forget about what life was like before the arrival of the Americans on this continent. And that's not woke to say. That's just history, right? Like everyone, like there's a real kind of intense level of life's pretty intense in the New World, right? Like there's an intensity to everything, and there's a lot of danger. And to see how the folklore material that was brought over by Europeans became sort of, because you did, obviously it's predominantly English speaking people in the British colonies, which later become America, but there's an admixture too, right, of Dutch, of German, and of Irish. And then later on, you get other, admixtures too, Italian, Greek, right? You get this sort of this blending of European folklores that then mesh together as everyone starts becoming more American and starts speaking English. And you can see, and what I love about American folklore is that depending on where you are in the United States, you can see, if you look at the local folklore, right? So like, I'm not an expert in Floridian folklore at all. I leave that to my learned colleague Caleb here, but I mean, I guarantee you, were I to do a deep dive, right, into Floridian folklore, I would instantly see the admixture of Scotch-Irish, of Spanish, of Amerindian, right, and probably also to a certain extent African, depending on where you were, folklore come out, right, because that's kind of the history of Florida. Is this interesting blend. That's what I love about, I mean, folklore in general, but particularly about American folklore. It is really, it's this kind of a constant dialogue between the various cultures that contributed the stories. But then everything is like forged in the furnace of this place of the United States, really of North America, right? In general, it's a like I said, it's a beautiful place, but it is a profoundly haunted place. I mean, really, I would argue everywhere on planet Earth is haunted, right? If you think about it. But there's a distinct flavor to the hauntedness of America that, if you do get a chance to go travel, you'll find that other places have a hauntedness to them, but it's a different flavor. It's not the same, right? Like,
I got a great example of that, actually.
Yeah.
So I was on my drive to Alaska, which is that saved a lot of my thinking going forward, because it was massive saying. But when I was in the woods of Wisconsin, I was driving through, the woods were haunted. I could just feel it in my bones. There was a sense of dread. It was overcast. I'm like, there are monsters in those woods that want to tear me limb from limb and eat me. But when I got into Canada and I got into like British Columbia, and I saw a meadow that was so picturesque, it looked like a child's coloring book.
Yep.
It was so beautiful. I'm like, I want to go ahead.
British Columbia has almost the same kind of biome environment that Western Washington does, and so
beautiful.
It's almost exactly the same. I know what you mean about the meadows; they're really beautiful here.
And so I'm just driving, and I'm like, man, I want to park my car and just go walk in the woods. I just want to explore this meadow. And then, as I'm thinking about doing that, I begin to feel like the Greek sailors who saw the sirens and the beautiful song that lured them to their death. I'm like, this is a different kind of haunted, but it's still haunted.
I was going to say, you need to be very careful, because particularly in BC, there's a non-zero chance that you can be killed by a cougar. And I don't mean, a 55-year-old woman at your local Starbucks. I mean like an actual cougar. So the animal that up here will kill you is going to probably be a big cat. So, and they do tend to attack hikers, particularly hikers who aren't from here and don't understand what to look for. And so I know you got Puma, you got Panthers, you got the Florida Panthers. We all know that they won the Stanley Cup. You got Panthers down in the swamp too. So I'm certain you're used to looking for this, but with the topography differences, we're not in a swamp. You might get distracted by that meadow, Caleb, and you might have gotten eaten. So I'm glad that you listened to your better angels and you were like, appreciate the meadow out the window and maybe don't walk.
I made the sign of the cross and was like, immediately I'm like, I don't want to go out there anymore. It was a different kind of, very interesting, but very different kind of haunting.
Yeah, we have a very mountainous kind of hauntedness up here. I think I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. And a part in anyone who's listened to anything I've done on any channel, anybody's show, or even my own show, knows that I kind of invariably end up telling stories, right? When we're doing episodes, because I'm a folklorist and we like to tell stories. This is how folklore continues to live and to breathe. There is a back in like the early 20th century, when they were putting in lots of railroad lines through the Pacific Northwest, they would just blast their way through mountains. This is a thing that many, you can all sorts of interesting information, documentaries about how they did this. It's insanely dangerous work. There is a east of Seattle, not that far east of Seattle, there is a tunnel that goes through a significant sized mountain that was it was dynamited for trains. And then later on, when the train tracks were taken out and the train routes were rerouted, and there was a better track was made, but they still had this huge tunnel through this mountainside. And so now what they've done is they've turned it into a trail. It's technically a Washington State hiking trail. And so one summer, me and my wife and our dog, we drove up into the mountains, because we didn't want to do it during the winter, because you don't want to be, the snow is dangerous. So we waited till the snow melted. We drove up into the mountains and we walked through this. And this was weird because it wasn't really like a strenuous hike. I've done far worse or more strenuous hikes, right? With huge inclines or sheer cliffs. You got to be careful so you don't die. All kinds of like cool outdoorsy Pacific Northwest stuff. This was literally just walking through a tunnel, but the tunnel is a mile long. It's a mile long tunnel through complete darkness. I mean, I'm talking total darkness. We had to have headlamps on. We had to it's the summertime, but we had to bundle our dog up. We had to put a coat, a winter coat on our dog, because it's cold in there. It's 45 or 40. It was 40 degrees in there. It was chilly.
That's so weird to me, because in Florida, if you're in any enclosed space without wind, it's super, super hot. So the idea of an enclosed space being cold because it's so full.
Cooled by the stone, right? So you have I don't even know how many tons of stone surrounds you, right? And it's a safe tunnel. It's not going to collapse on you, but it doesn't matter, because your monkey brain doesn't know that it's not going to collapse on you, right? You are deep into, it's the deepest under. Well, the thing is, you're not even going down, you're just going flat. But because you're going through a mountain, effectively, it's like you're going underground, right? And the farther you go into the tunnel, because of the way a mountain is shaped, you are going further under stone. You are going further underground. And the thing is, you go through, it's a mile, and you pop out the other side. It's a beautiful mountain vista. And then you eat a snack, and then you have to get back to your car. You have to walk a mile back through the tunnel. And it is, talk about dark whimsy. I mean, what compelled us to do this? I found it online.
Where is this? Because I want to check it out.
This is the Iron Horse Trail. It's east of Issaquah, Washington. If you're driving, so I-90, which goes from Chicago all the way to Seattle, Washington, takes you actually right near the trailhead. So if anyone's ever traveling, it's just on the east side of the Cascade Mountains. It's before you hit Ellensburg, Washington. It's the Iron Horse Trail. Anyone can look it up. It's a public park area, but it's what compelled me to go do this, right? And I thought about that quite distinctly when I was halfway through the walking through the trail. I was there's no turning back now, right? We have to finish this trail.
I'm looking at photos of the trail on my phone because we're camping. It's incredibly, wow, that looks scary.
I can't describe, and there's no way with the camera I had to take a good picture of the inside because it's so dark. I can't describe what it's like. But I mean, what compelled me to go do this? I don't know, except all I would say is I don't know if I'm a goth on the outside, but I'm kind of a goth on the inside, right? I was somebody growing up in high school, I was a jock, but then I would read Anne Rice novels about vampires and stuff, right? So I'm kind of I guess I'm kind of a goth at heart, but I just don't have the courage to dress like a goth. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm drawn to weird, strange, bizarre, beautiful, but also scary things. And what is more, I mean, those things all together is kind of this tunnel, right? This tunnel that was built by men over 100 years ago, blasted through a mountainside. And it's just waiting for you to walk through it for those who are brave enough. But it was like the mines of Moria. I mean, it was a kind of darkness, to talk about dark whimsy, maybe to switch from the gothic to the dark whimsy. I mean, it was a kind of literal darkness that you can't even imagine. Like I was completely unnerved and enjoyed the hell out of it. Like, it was amazing. I mean, it was like entering into the grave and then coming out of the grave. There was something almost resurrectional about exiting the tunnel. You felt like you kind of had achieved something, and all you did was a 2-mile walk, right, on flat surface, which is not like on paper like astounding. But what you're doing is you're doing a 2-mile walk through complete darkness. Like, this is an intense thing, and the human brain starts to you get halfway through and you tell yourself you're not going to freak out, but you will freak. You have to overcome the freak out, because your monkey brain is like, this is so wrong, right? Like, this is so wrong. Like, you shouldn't be here. You don't belong here. But again, as an American, right? And as an American who lives in the West, it's interesting. I know you guys got, you are Florida man. I respect Florida man. You're hitting gators on the head, and you're eating weird fish that you caught out of the snake infested waters. I respect that. But out here in the West, it's like, here's this mountainside, and we, perhaps in our arrogance, decided it'd be a good idea to just blow a hole through it. I'm gonna walk into that because I can. Yeah, I've told this story to a good friend of mine who's from Germany, and he just like kind of doesn't get it. Like, but he's like, but what would compel you to do that? I'm like, why not? Why wouldn't I do that? Like,
it's a very American attitude. It's like, why not?
It's terrifying. I'm excited about this. Yeah. And I do think that this connects. I would totally have died on the Oregon Trail. I'm nowhere near as much of a man as those people were. But at the same time, like you said, there's kind of a carryover, right? And in the world of folklore studies, this is called a survival, quote unquote. This is a whole thing that people write about. This is called like a cultural survival, which is essentially a piece of a culture that holds over from an earlier era. And it could be very useful. Sometimes survivals are like, allow that culture to continue to survive. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're kind of like they're like a tailbone. You don't need it so much anymore, but it's like your tailbone, right? It's an integral part of your culture. So why wouldn't you have it? We call these survivals. I think that this dark whimsy, this gothic whimsy, whatever you want to call it, is that the obsession perhaps with the weird and with the dangerous is a very American thing, because of, like I said, of our history. This is we literally forged a nation on like a continent that probably shouldn't have had a nation on it. I thank God we did, right? God bless America. I love them. I'm not hating. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of insane when you think about it, right? Like, people today, myself today, we're not capable of this. Right? We can't do this. Yet at the same time, we have this attraction to the darkness, to the whimsy. I think this is also totally explains Americans' absolute love of Halloween. The holiday doesn't originate from America, but we love it, right? And because it speaks to, I think, something that we experienced culturally in the past, but also continue to experience. I mean, yeah, okay, the West was one, I guess. America is a very high, very advanced society, despite all of our many issues and our civilizational crisis in which we find ourselves. But like, we have smartphones. That's all fine and good. We have a highway system. That's all fine and good. We have gasoline. We have electricity. We have antibiotics and all these things, which are all good things. But this, Caleb, from your experience somewhat recently, and I've done some long drives, at least through the western part of the United States. There's just whole sections where, okay, I might be on a very high-tech modern road, but there's nothing else.
Yukon, the Yukon of Canada is exactly like that. There was nothing. It was when I drove back from Alaska to Florida. Excuse me. The Yukon, it was so dark. It was almost as if demons had grabbed the nighttime and just blanketed the area. It was so dark. I thought darkness had form. Like, you reach out and actually grab the darkness and put it in your pocket. There was no moonlight. There was no stars. You couldn't see the headlights would go maybe 5 feet, 10 feet ahead of you. You couldn't see the curves. You're going 15 miles an hour on the road.
That's intense. Yeah.
It was so scary.
And if something happens to you, it might be a while before somebody
That
finds you.
exactly, because there's no guardrails either, and the roads are full of potholes because they're not
And
maintained. You know, if you go
and
off the side, you're stuck and you're waiting until morning.
and the someone who finds you might not have your best interests at heart.
That's the other scary thing.
And so this is also, I think, part of the dark whimsy of North America, but particularly of the United States, is that we also have a cultural memory of and really a living continued memory. I mean, I say that as somebody who comes from the Pacific Northwest. We are notable for many things up here: orcas, coffee, Nirvana, and serial killers. Um, I mean, there are whole swaths of this here United States that are hunting grounds effectively for serial killers, and I'm that's not hyperbole. You know, you read these very disturbing reports from experts in serial killers from various law enforcement agencies, where they say, just like off the cuff, because they're so desensitized to it, right? It's just a job for them, where they're like, yeah, you know, like there's probably several killers in this area, but we just can't. They're probably just too good. We can't catch them. And you're like, wonderful. And I live in one of those areas.
You should never say that out loud if you're in law enforcement.
Yeah.
That is a stupid thing to say out loud.
I don't think it's stupid at all, because of the dark whimsy has a survival. It has a purpose in our culture. We are attracted to things like serial killers in order to protect ourselves from things like serial killers.
This reminds me of what do you know about the Aztecs?
Just the basics. You probably actually know more than I do.
Okay, so there was a Aztec festival they would do where they would skin someone alive, and then the priest would wear the flayed skin like a cloak and would haunt people's houses until they were given gifts.
Yeah,
is very early trick or treating.
I was gonna say that sounds like if Planned Parenthood put on Halloween, but yeah, yeah.
But what it was like if you didn't give a gift, it was kind of a sign that you weren't a part of the community. You weren't willing to stay with the community.
You're not an upstanding citizen like us. You're not.
But the weird part is they would wear these cloaks for like a month. So imagine the smell.
Literally, imagine the smell, everyone. Imagine the smell. Yeah.
Thank God for the conquistadors.
I know. No, the more you read about that, the more you realize how actually, you know, there were probably some excesses, but I don't know how many there actually were, because I try to put myself in the position of people who have encountering people who are doing kind of just like the worst things possible, and like, what would my reaction be? I might tend towards violence, because
there's two books I'm gonna recommend to everybody. Okay, Conquistadors by Fernando Caveras. He is a Mexican guy who wrote a history of the conquistadors, and he very clearly says you cannot understand the conquistadors if you do not understand Catholicism and at least a desire for missionary work. And then I would recommend everyone read Camille Paglia's book Fifth Son, which is the most cohesive history of the Aztec people, from the rise to the fall to even a little bit after, when they started translating the old stories after the Spanish gave them a written language.
Yeah.
Incredible books to read, because the Aztecs, I think it was Bird who said, like, what kind of demons were you dealing with? Was like, hey, we're going to make you really good at math. You just got to sacrifice a few hundred babies a year.
Well, AI could easily become, maybe AI is already at that point, right? Depending on how you.
It's the same demon.
It might be the same. Yeah. You've brought up the Aztecs, a Mesoamerican indigenous people. If I can, I'd like to bring up one of my favorite indigenous peoples to study, because I have had the privilege of visiting them and talking to some of them, and that's the Cherokee.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah, the Cherokee are really good people. I really like that. I haven't had like a ton. They're really fine, nice people. No, I haven't had a ton of. I visited. I lived for a bit in Oklahoma, and I went out to Tahlequah, the Cherokee capital. I actually have a lot of sympathy with the Cherokee, because they converted to Christianity and adopted everything that Americans wanted, and we still fucked them. I actually do feel bad about I don't feel bad about everyone, but I feel bad about the Cherokee, because
there were certain native tribes that there is a reason to feel guilty for.
They really tried, and despite the way that our government treated them, I'm not saying every American did this or is at fault. I'm saying the government of particularly of the state of Georgia was really horrendous to them. They did everything people wanted them to do, and they got a raw deal out of it. They ended up in Oklahoma, what is now Oklahoma, what was then Indian country. Their capital is Tahlequah, Oklahoma. It's one of the prettiest places in the United States I've ever been. It's really beautiful out there. It's not the plains. It's the green country of Oklahoma. It's almost Arkansas. It's very hilly. It's very like just tons of deciduous trees. It's lots of rivers. It's beautiful. The Cherokee, you know, they mirrored their entire system of government after ours. I mean, like they have a constitution and like a tripartite government like we do. I mean, it's very, I don't know. I like the Cherokee quite a bit. The Cherokee have, this connects, I promise this connects. The Cherokee during the Civil War, kind of not for super surprising reasons, weren't a huge fan of the Union because of like, you know, U.S. government policy regarding their land and stuff like that. And it's a complex thing. There's actually a really good book about it I could recommend if anyone's interested, about the history of the Cherokee Nation, particularly through the Civil War. But the Cherokees, by and large, fought for the South, along with the other four civilized tribes. So there's five civilized tribes in Oklahoma. Cherokee are probably the most notable of these. They fought for the South, and I actually went out to, when I was living in Oklahoma, because it was during COVID and there was nothing else to do. I just drove around the state looking at historical sites, and I went out to what is it? The Battle of, I think it's Honey Creek, I believe. Now, this isn't a gigantic battlefield like Manassas or Bull Run or nothing like Gettysburg. But I mean, it's the first and it's one of the only Civil War battlefields that I've ever visited. I'm from the West Coast, right? Like we don't have Civil War battlefields in our backyard. We're not like in Virginia. We're not like in Pennsylvania, right? We're not like in Maryland. It's just different out here. So to actually get to go to one of these things was really cool, and I was really excited, and I was so excited, and I was like the only guy I got a personal tour of the museum by the museum, curator, and all this stuff, and I was super pumped, and I went out to the battlefield, and I had to leave. The ground was like, it's like I don't know if I've told this story to anyone on a podcast before, but I didn't hear shouts with my ears, but I heard shouts in my soul. I heard like cannon fire and people screaming. And the closer I got to the battle, like on the battle, because they let you walk the battlefield. The closer I got to where like the main picket lines were, where like it was over the creek where people were, it was the main fortifications of the two sides. I had to actually leave, and I felt really bad. I was like, I drove all the way out here. I'm like, yeah, but like this place, man, like even for me who loves the dark, the strange, the gothic, the weird, the macabre, I was like, the scream, it really was kind of like a scene from The Shining. It was like the screams were just too loud in my head, because there
is something to be said about walking the battlefield and
a lot of people
feeling
died.
it.
Yeah, a lot of people died. Very gruesome deaths here. Like cannonball wounds are really bad. Assuming you don't die right away, they're really, musket wounds are really bad. Like, it was just a lot.
I walked the Battle of Little Bighorn on my back, and I could feel it. You know, when you're walking, there was a graveyard for veterans, there's a graveyard for Native Americans, and you can feel it in the air. I don't know how to put it into words specifically, but you can feel death in the air.
Yes.
You know, well, and it's a haunting feeling.
And the reason I bring this up, because it fits well within American dark whimsy, is also because I know that you've started reading Shelby Foote's massive history of the Civil War, and it's interesting because, I mean, the history of the Civil War that I had been told, you know, in elementary school, in middle school, and high school, right, was very much of like the Eastern Front, right? Like the main engagements, the main battles, the big battles where you had what we would call pitched battles, right? You know, troops maneuvering in the field, and Chamberlain's defense of, you know, Round Top, and all the, you know, these great.
As much as I am a Southerner born and bred and love the South, I have immense respect for Chamberlain.
Yeah, right.
That is the details of his battle are incredible. And he also had a great mustache.
Yeah, I was going to say the facial hair,
mustache.
Right? Yeah. So that was kind of what I thought the Civil War was. But then when I was living in Oklahoma, I was just doing a deep dive into Oklahoman history because it was fascinating to me. I love Oklahoma. It's my second favorite state in the Union. And the only reason I care more about Washington is because I'm from here. But like, you know, and I have to, because it's where I'm from. But I love Oklahoma, and I love Oklahomans. They're some of the best people I've ever met in this country. I'm just going to put that out there. Okies get shit on for no reason. They're really good people. And half my family's from Texas, and I will say Oklahomans are nicer than Texans. I'm just
Wow.
saying it right there, and that's going to probably put a few lasers on my back. I got to be careful now. But
I gotta say, I drove through Texas. I don't get it. I don't get why people are so in
if
love and
you
obsessed
have,
with Texas.
so
I don't understand it.
I'm not from Texas, but I have family in Texas, and I went to school at a Texas university. So
Mm.
I kind of, I don't get it in that like intuitive sense, but I can kind of conceptualize why people love it. I do understand it. I don't know if I feel it all the time, but I understand it. And like my
Mm.
priest is from he's from Texas, and like I get it, right? Like the things he says about where he's from and his family's land and the connection to the land and the cows, I get it, right? I
Mm.
understand it. It's not my life, but I can appreciate why they like it. In any case, Oklahoma is a great wonderful place for the wonderful people. The Civil War had a whole Western front that nobody really learns about. So when I was living out there and visiting these sites, I took it upon myself to do as much of a deep dive into Oklahoman Civil War history, particularly as I could. And it's fascinating because you have a lot of the people fighting out there are not even white, properly speaking. They're like, either full blood indigenous or mixed blood, and they're fighting for this Confederacy. so the narrative is completely shifted in my mind, right? Because I got a very kind of paused post-civil rights movement version of the Civil War, right? And then you read what it actually was. You're like, wait, what? Like, oh yeah, the Cherokees had slaves, and I'm like, okay, they had plantations.
That is weird to think about.
You're
Actually,
like,
the Native
okay.
Americans having
I mean,
slaves.
it's definitely was a vibe, and I'm not I mean, I constitutionally, maybe because I'm a northerner, I don't think slavery is a good thing. I also don't think burning people's plantations down is a good thing. I kind of, the whole thing was just a gigantic tragedy, an
Yes.
American tragedy, really, in the
You
end.
don't even want to get me started on the Civil War, because being Catholic and a distributist, but also deeply American, I'm like, I love Taylors for what they built out of the American Empire, but also I love the agrarian communities of the South. Also, I understand the need for federalism and the need for empire, but also I like the idea of
Yeah.
local communities and success. And
Yeah.
there was no event in history I am more like, this is a perfect example. Everything Lincoln did, I hate because I am a Southerner. But in the
It
abstract, he
kind of
was a
makes
super
sense.
Machiavellian president, and I
Kind of
respect
makes
him for
sense
trying to
though.
build it.
Yeah, you're like,
Exactly. I'm so torn on Lincoln. I hate him,
yeah,
and
but
I
it
respect
kind
him.
of makes sense though. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, because like, what else would he have needed to do? If his goal is
Yes.
to keep the Union together? Now, if you don't like the Union, that's one thing. But if you like the Union, then you kind of, I don't know.
And I'm so torn on the Union. I'm so torn on it. It's
Yeah.
such a
In any case, the way that people, particularly Cherokees, but also Creeks, Seminoles, various other tribes, right, fought, they were fighting effectively a white man's war, but fighting it with native tactics.
Mm.
And native tactics included things like scalping. And so I do think this man is a hero. I think this man is a hero, and he's a hero of the Cherokee Nation and a hero of the Confederacy. And that is Stand Watie. I don't know if you've ever heard of Stand Watie, Caleb.
Looking him up now on my phone because we're on
Epic
campfire.
man. He never really could learn English very well, but he still, so all of his orders had to be translated to him, which is kind of, so he had to have a person who was bilingual next to him pretty much at all times to understand what the commanders wanted him to do, and vice versa. This is very interesting. You don't think of like a multilingual Confederate army, but in some places it actually was. Which again, the history out in Oklahoma is insane and really interesting.
I just found artwork of him in a Confederate getup,
Yep.
the gray uniform.
Yep. This is
wow. This guy's cool.
The most Cherokee-looking dude you've ever seen
yes.
in your life. It was a Confederate, and a proud Confederate. So Stand Watie, I'm not making this up. This is real. Stand Watie got in trouble by Confederate command because he kept scalping Union soldiers. Now, okay, before you get all angry, they were already dead.
Yes.
So
scalping is something I am very torn on because it's brutal.
Live people.
Yeah. Scalping is brutal, but also it's.
So you can ask yourself, why did he scalp them? Because he was Cherokee. And so the Cherokee Nation thought of itself as a nation and had allied itself with the Confederacy. And so they were fighting with the Confederacy, alongside the Confederacy, but they were fighting as Cherokees. And so and Stan Wadey was not there was this, the Confederate nation at this point was made up of like broadly two groups. There were the mixed race people who all were fluent in English, and many of whom actually didn't even really speak Cherokee anymore. And all of them were basically Presbyterian because Scots went in and married Cherokee women and basically produced kind of its own subsection of the Cherokee nation. That's part of the reason why Cherokees today don't always look quote unquote Indian. It's because there's a lot of Scottish admixture in the terms of how the genetic makeup of the tribe. It's a very complex thing. Wadey was part of the other group that hadn't intermarried. And so he doesn't look at all like somebody who's fighting for the Confederacy, but he's fighting for the Confederacy as a Cherokee. So if you were a great Cherokee warrior, which Stan Wadey, regardless of your opinion of him, your opinion of the Civil War, your opinion of the Confederacy, or any of that stuff, he was a great warrior, right? Like he was good at war. And as someone who was good at war as a Cherokee, he just took scalps because that's what you did. And he didn't understand why everyone was getting angry. It's like, well, why would well, what's wrong? They're already dead. I'm just taking their scalp. Why are you angry about this?
I don't know, but every time scalping comes up, I can't help but think of the French Indian War, when after the Brits sided with the Cherokee, they sent a letter to the French like, please just surrender. We can't stop these people. They will scalp you. Just fucking surrender, please.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's also notable about Stan Wadey is that he kept fighting long after surrender.
Yeah, they say he was the last Confederate general to surrender.
He refused. Because part of it wasn't all just him being stubborn. Part of it was it took a long time to get messages out. They didn't have telegraph wires out to Indian territory, right? So they could only get the telegraph message as far as it to a certain point. Probably, I can't remember, somewhere Arkansas probably. And then they had to like hop on a horse, but then also go find him because he was out with his troops in the wood, like in the Oklahoman hills, like killing people. He just wouldn't stop. And then he's like, but I don't want to stop because we haven't given up yet, right? Like, because to give up, victory or death is kind of like the Cherokee warrior motto, right? Like, it really is victory or death, and I haven't been killed yet, so I'm not done. I'll be finished when I say I'm finished. Eventually, he did stop, but he was still fighting. I don't quote me on this. Nobody quote me on this. But I think into 1866 he was still fighting a frontier war, kind of almost on his own. With his group of guys. It's almost like if anyone's seen.
I just gotta say, what a movie would this be, man?
Well, the movie has kind of been made, is what I was going to say. If you've seen the movie Apocalypse Now, this is Colonel Kurtz, right? This is Colonel Kurtz who goes into Cambodia and wages a war that he wasn't supposed to be waging. But the thing is, the Confederate leadership was kind of like, he is really good at killing people. I guess we kind of publicly denounced the scalping, but let him go do it, right? Like, and so, the movie would be good, but unfortunately, it's kind of already been made. It's Apocalypse Now. Although the stuff that the stuff that Colonel Kurtz is doing to people in Apocalypse Now is so much worse than anything Stan Wadey was doing. Because again, these people have already been killed, and then they're just taking a trophy. But from a Cherokee perspective, this made perfect sense. Why wouldn't I want to tell everyone how many people I've killed?
I gotta say, I am so torn on war trophies from corpses. Like, I'll give a great example. During World War II, a Marine sent the president a knife made of a Japanese person's bone. So torn.
This is peak brutal American. This is the brutal Americans. Yeah, this is just.
It's on one hand, it's like, man, you shouldn't desecrate dead people. On the other hand, it's war, and that's kind of cool. I'm so torn on that. I think that's the high-minded pious Catholic versus the underground Templar Knight.
Yeah, I think it's, and I think we also probably, my opinion is that everyone probably should be torn on this kind of stuff because, you probably shouldn't feel good either way, right?
If you love it, you're weird, and if you hate it, you don't understand the desire for trophies.
Or you just don't even understand combat at that point, right?
Yes,
Now,
and you should be torn on. Like I think
you should be
anyone not
torn.
torn, anyone not torn on the death penalty bothers me. You should be torn on the death penalty, for example.
Well,
There
and
should be a at least an internal struggle with the idea of the state killing those who are not saved, knowing full well they're going to hell.
well,
that should
I'm
at
gonna
least give you some pause.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was trying to figure out how to move into the next and probably last, because I want to mind your time. Last section that I want to talk about, because the kind of violence that we see on the West, this will connect back to the death penalty. I promise. I'll find a connection. So the kind of violence that we see on the Western front of the Civil War in what is now Oklahoma, was very different. You weren't having pitched battles. It was raids, people running in with horses, killing you, shooting you, and then scalping you and running away, and maybe burning your farmstead down and stuff like that. It was like basically Wild West violence, but as part of a larger war. This is not the first time of this has happened. Obviously, the frontier was always violent. A good example, a much earlier example, is Bleeding Kansas. People always kind of forget that the American Civil War started in the 1850s, and it started in Kansas, which is the heartland of the country, which is the middle of the country. And there's something about that. The wound that the Civil War inflicted started at the heart of the country, like geographically. And I don't think that I mean that in the most wooky, like supernatural, strange, spooky woo sense. Like there's something about Kansas, and Kansas is an interesting place. It's very weird there. It's very liminal. I don't know if you've read
that is a perfect. I went to a wedding in Kansas a few months ago. That is the perfect term for it.
Yes. I don't know if you've read anything about Bleeding Kansas, but Bleeding Kansas had what? Bushwhackers and Jayhawks, right? Yeah. And so Jayhawks were Union, anti-slavery. Yeah. And Bushwhackers, yes, were pro-slavery. Some of the worst atrocities of, well, the Civil War, I guess, hadn't officially started yet, but like some of the most, now obviously way more people are killed in Gettysburg, right? Way more people are killed in these big battles. And those are, in terms of numbers, the bigger atrocities. But in terms of like the personal nature of the violence, like, I know you, I'm going to come onto your land and behead you. By the way, John Brown is a terrorist and an evil man. And anyone who loves John Brown has no place in America, by the way. Regardless of your opinion about North versus South, what John Brown was doing in Bleeding Kansas will blow your mind. Read about what he did, and then look at how the left lionizes him today. I challenge, like, John Brown is absolute sociopathic, crazy man, evil man. But both sides were not great. But there's something about the nature of frontier. It's spread out. There's not a lot of people. So when I find you, the battle is like me and you. We each shoot at each other. Maybe we hit, maybe we miss, but our guns aren't very advanced at this point. So we only get one shot, and now we're at each other with knives or like stones and sticks, or strangling each other, like drowning people in wells and stuff like that. It is like it's nowhere near the level of death that you find in something like the Holodomor in Ukraine, but it has that personal vendetta violence quality that
I don't think there's anything more brutal than, say, like a bayonet charge at the same time period.
Yes, this is but this isn't even a bayonet charge. This is like two guys in the middle of a field and no one else is around, but they're just killing each other, right? It's like insane stuff. And then the displaying of the bodies in a certain way to send a message to the other side, the destruction of farmland, the purposeful destruction of farmland to make people starve. I mean, all crazy. This is insane. Yeah. I was talking today at church with someone about this. Tim Pool likes to talk about civil war and how we're entering into a civil war. But the truth is, we've been in a civil war. The problem is that Americans view civil war as the pitched battles in the Eastern Front, when in reality, what most civil wars in history are like is more like Bleeding Kansas, or more like the Western Front of the American Civil War in Oklahoma, where it's hyper personalized. And I will bring it up because you've given me permission to do so. R.I.P. to the martyr Charlie Kirk, who that is what actual Civil War, what we've witnessed, is like. And that kind of stuff that we saw with Charlie Kirk was what Bleeding Kansas was like. And
if someone goes out and kills Hassan Piker or kills Destiny, God forbid, because I don't want either of them dead by senseless acts of violence, and I specify senseless acts of violence, not state-sanctioned executions.
Right.
we would be in a. I think we have to really expand what we deem civil war, because I think you could argue if politics is war by other means, and politics is what is simply done in the open, as Aristotle would define it, then the getting someone fired is a economic war in a sense, an economic military strike.
And as I have said on, I believe, your show, all warfare in the 21st century is primarily economic.
Mm-hmm.
You will still get military action, you will still get assassinations, but it's primarily economic. Do with that information, everyone, what you will. But firing somebody, I don't know. Right? It can happen.
Yeah.
Be careful what you post.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to cry any tears. But yeah, you know, God forbid anything happens to these people. But you can edit that out if you want, or leave it in. I leave it up to you. But what we're seeing now, and I say this, I know I'm being glib, but I'm not trying to be glib. What we see with Charlie Kirk's assassination, that's what civil war is like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not pitched battles, because the American Civil War was basically a war between two nations.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a civil war. A civil war is personal, and it's designed to make a point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's designed to provoke a certain reaction. And that's the kind of stuff that for a large part of our history as Americans, we were having to deal with. And, you know, it's unfortunate now, although not surprising, that we're having to deal with it yet again, because we've kind of never totally stopped dealing with it. Everyone forgets the other underground and the communist insurgency in the 1970s, 60s and 70s, and all the people that were killed as a part of that.
You could argue Reconstruction era governments of the South were a continuation of the Civil War. I
would probably agree with that. I would also say that the civil rights movement in the 1960s probably was a continuation to a certain extent of violence.
You could make a very strong argument that the Civil War never actually fully ended, and we're still dealing with the repercussions and the continued action of two sides.
Yes, and regardless of anyone's opinion about anything we're saying, that I feel like does hold. It just has never ended.
Yeah.
But for a while, we were fighting it under banners with uniforms, and so we tell ourselves that was what the Civil War was. Yeah. But it never stopped. It morphs. It changes. I don't like it. It's not a good thing. I don't revel in any war, particularly in a civil war, as they are the most nasty, brutal, and personal of all kinds of warfare. And we are
if you can study the Civil War without coming to tears at least once, you are a heartless bastard, and I want nothing to do with you.
Right. Regardless,
you should cry at least once.
Regardless of which side you have sympathies for, and I mean, I guess you can tell I'm from the West, Western United States, because I find sympathies on both sides, and I find, you know, heroes on both sides. I find villains on both sides. That, you know, and because I'm not a Yankee. Everyone in the South says we're Yankee. I'm like, no, we're Western. We're just from the West, man. Like, we just
I don't consider Californians or anyone on the West Coast a Yankee.
I guess they're maybe Yankee adjacent, but not like somebody from Boston, right? Like, it's funny. Sometimes people lump us together with New Englanders. I'm like, I don't have a whole lot in common with someone from New England. Like, I just don't, right? Like, not really. The West is a big mishmash of everyone, right? The West was just thrown together.
I will say this: anyone who's traveled across this country will understand the difference between East Coast and West Coast. It's very real, and just in temperament and architectural style and music and it's the way people interact. It's a very different thing, and the same with North South. North South, East West are very different coordinates of America.
Yeah, and at some point you kind of just get the West, like in the West, you kind of have, there's a distinction between like the Rocky Mountains and then the coast, I guess. But in the Rocky Mountains is like very Mormon coded. I'll leave that for another day. I won't start that rant about why we allow that to happen, but whatever. That's our big thing out here is you have back east, you have north south, right? Like out here we have, are you Mormon or not? that's the Western blood feud. But you know, I'm certain some of them are wonderful people. But
there's a whole conversation to be had about Mormons, because there are no group of people I can conceptually despise everything about a Mormon, but I have Mormon cousins and Mormon family members, and they're so nice it's unnerving. But the nicety, you feel like this hides the heresy.
Likewise, I also
And
have
so
some family members. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to argue, but you feel like a dick, despite the fact that they're speaking nonsense. But you feel
Yes.
like the dick for arguing, and it's like, man, what a great defense! What a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
defense of your nonsense by being so fucking nice. I feel
By
like a
being
dick
so
for
nice.
disagreeing.
They're very nice people. No, and I
They
don't bear
are.
them any personal animus.
Yeah.
But they're kind. It's
One
that
of my
kind of.
favorite cousins is Mormon. He's a great guy. I love.
It's
It's weird because
the.
he quoted St. Thomas Aquinas at me once, and I'm like, stop it! You don't get to do that.
You don't get to do that.
You don't get to claim him. You don't. No, shut up.
Well,
you don't get to do this to me.
Caleb, you're very kind in letting me, the token Protestant, on your channel. So I will say, in the spirit of brotherly love, just remember, dear Catholics, that Aquinas would have agreed with Luther on the Eucharist. That's all I got to say. And I'll just throw that bomb in there and just walk away. So yeah, no, we can fight that battle another day. But yeah, it's in the West, it's different, right? We don't have this strong North-South thing. We kind of have our own little weird intra-tribal fights that kind of don't make sense to people on the East and vice versa. But I guess in an attempt to kind of wrap all this up all together, because I know you're probably wanting to get out here at some point.
Oh no, I plan to go for as long as this conversation is feeding.
Okay.
There's no time limit on this one.
Okay, good. Sorry, no, I'm used to people. Sorry, I'm so used to pause is so good about a hard hour that I'm trying to always do that. But yeah,
man, we are chilling by the campfire in the woods. There is no
I'm
need
happy.
in this conversation.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to cut it off. I was just trying to respect your time. Yeah, no, the West though is interesting, and I know you're somebody who's traveled through the West now, and so you've gotten an impression of the West. And I'm it's kind of weird, right? Because I'm from the city, so in some ways every American city is kind of the same, and definitely cities on the West Coast are kind of the same, and they used to be beautiful are now kind of hellholes because of what poor leadership, unchecked immigration, and fentanyl has done to them. But
I will say, when I was in Seattle, I felt an immense sense of sadness that such a beautiful land and super nice people were absolutely the same thing I felt in Canada. When I drove through Canada, my only thought was, man, how do we organize a Canadian rebellion against this government? Canadian people are too nice to deserve what is happening to them.
If you'll let me opine, it seems like you will, I can tell you about at least my perspective on this. And this is just one Seattleite's perspective. But me and my wife are kind of unique. We're both millennial. I guess you'd say older millennial. So we are both, but we were born and raised in this city. We are some of the last people of our age group who are left in the city. Most people have just gone elsewhere because, people in America just move around a lot. We and I've lived elsewhere. It's not like I haven't lived elsewhere, but I've always kind of returned to Seattle. Not even necessarily through my own choice. It was kind of, I think there's a providential returning. I do really feel like we were talking about before you hit the record button. I feel called to stay here because you asked a good question of me today, just now, which was, why do you stay? Why don't you move? And I think what I said was something like, I'm not opposed to moving, but as long as I feel like I need to be here, I will be here. And I think I said something like, people will not make me leave. Like
I will never besmirch an individual or a family for choosing to stick it out in their homeland and try to fight to make it better because it is their home.
Yes.
I cannot besmirch anyone because I'm a distributist. I'm a Catholic distributist. There's nothing to me more powerful than someone's home. Well, and anyone who despises their home, I despise them. I can't trust you if you don't like your homeland.
Well, I know I threw a gauntlet at you just for fun about Aquinas and the Eucharist, but that was don't at me, everyone. It's just for fun. Although I am correct. I'm going to bring up one of your guys, Chesterton's Pimlico, right? His writing about why do people love Pimlico, even though maybe Pimlico isn't the greatest part of England? Well, it's because they're from there, right? And this is where I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but you get that great bit about, right? Like, people did not love Rome because she was great. She was great because people loved her.
Yes.
Right. And I really do. That, I think, is something that I really do believe, at least about my city and about my region. But I mean, I am from the city of Seattle, and I'm not going to tell you exactly where because I am behind enemy lines out here. But I am in the city. I am from and live inside the city of Seattle. And who knows exactly where in a city of a lot of people I am, right? And I'm very good at blending in. I'm very good at the gray man. It's a good question to be asked. Why do you stay? I think you should ask yourself that every day. Why do you stay? I stay because I love it here, despite it being so bad. And that might seem weird, but I love, like, there's a lot of really good things about the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of, like, our coffee is better than anyone else's coffee in this entire continent. And you cannot convince me otherwise. Our coffee is the best coffee in North America, like, bar none. I do like a lot of, I was actually just talking about this with my wife today as we were driving. It's funny because the reason we are kind of, you talked about Mormons being skinwalkers. In some ways, you could say that we are kind of skinwalkers, but to the shit libs, because all of the things that we kind of culturally like, and I don't mean things like sacrificing babies and horrible like genital mutilation. What I mean is like the kinds of music we like, the kinds of dress that we wear, the way we talk, what we eat, the recipes we like are all very clearly inspired by Seattle, where we're from, right? We are just kind of like hard right Seattleites. And the thing is, we are not alone. That's the crazy thing, is that we are few and maybe far between, but we are not alone. There are others of us out here, and we have I won't go into too much detail. There's an informal way of finding each other. We find our friends out here, right? And people, you might be like, that's a crazy way to live. And it is kind of a crazy way to live. But they've ruined so much of what the city used to be, right? And like, particularly growing up in the 90s, and Seattle was never perfect, but it had a lot of good stuff, right? Like, I have fond childhood memories of this city. I love the climate. I love the rain. I love the gray. I love the way that the sound that the rain makes when it hits the evergreen trees, like at night, is beautiful. Like, you can't replicate. Nowhere else in America do you really get this. Maybe Portland, but it's like this region has something that's special, and I just absolutely categorically refuse to vacate the West Coast to the left. Why? Right? Because of course we're not in the majority out here, but Lord willing, we will be able to greet somebody as liberators when they arrive, right? Like, we have to keep the fire. It's very much like Cormac McCarthy, right? If you've read The Road, have you read The Road? You got to keep the fire. You got to keep the fire burning, right? Like, somebody has to keep the fire burning. It can't.
My thought immediately went to the gates of Toledo. Like, you guys are gonna open the gates for us.
Yeah, right. Like, somebody has to keep the fire going, right? Like, we can't just leave. I don't blame people who leave. I really don't. But like, some of us are just like, we have to be here. Like, and it makes I think about this a lot. It makes no logical sense, because logically I should have moved to Montana, Wyoming, somewhere else, right? Like, by this point, Idaho, even. I love Idaho. I like Idahoans. They're great people, Idaho. They are. I love Idahoans. But and that's the closest, escape point for me. But I'm like, I just, like, I'm supposed to be here. It makes no logical sense, but I am just kind of, so schizo and Protestant, I guess. I'm just like, providentially, I'm supposed to be here. And I guess I'm just supposed to be here and be kind of doing some stuff, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I won't say anymore, about, that kind of helps to further, well, ultimately, Lord willing, the cause of Christ, but the cause of just also decency of like the goodness of this area. It's not like it's all bad, right? Like, the world is not unredeemable. There's not just bad stuff everywhere. There's a lot of, it's basically Samwise Gamgee is what I'm saying here, right? There's a lot of good left in the world. And maybe I could say, I don't know if anyone who listens to your show is from the Pacific Northwest or from the West Coast in general, because California also by rights should be an amazing place. It's just not, because people decided to make it bad. There's still a lot of good left on the West Coast, right? It's still worth fighting for. And I don't know if it's ever going to be Shire level quaintness, but there's good stuff. And I mean, so I don't know if this is jiving with you as a Floridian, as a Florida man, but you're a Catholic, so I think a lot of this probably will jive with y'all's kind of, understanding
predicament of being an American.
Well, of just being of like connection to place, right? Like,
yeah,
connection to where you're from, and like love of the patria, right? Like, love of the homeland, like love of where you're, maybe not even your deep ancestors, because we're Americans and we move around a lot, but maybe your family, like where your immediate family, nuclear family, decided to have you, right? Might mean something, probably does. So I don't know. I'm ranting, I'm raving. You're very kind in letting me do this, but
no problem.
I do think the connection to dark whimsy here is my willingness to my not love of the dark. I don't love the dark, but I am fascinated by it. And I like being scared, to tie it back into Halloween. I like being scared, not because evil is good, but because I like to remind myself that being scared of evil is kind of a good reaction to have, right? Like we were saying with the wagon trains, you would want to know what had taken them out, right? Right. Even just for, to have sympathy with those who, I'm not saying revel in someone's suffering. I'm not saying, I'm not saying dance on the grave of a young man and his wife and his daughter.
We're not Israelis. We don't dance when people
we don't
die.
Dance. And I think the people who, I won't say what I think should happen to the people who do that, because I know your channel goes out, or your show goes out on many places, but let's just say, things have a way of coming back. The door swings both ways, I guess is what I would say to that. But wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But but there's kind of something useful about being scared. And I think if you can approach fear from the right kind of perspective, and I'm not saying I always do, but I attempt to, right? From a Christian perspective, there's something good about being scared, and your willingness to recognize threats, recognize patterns, and then live your life accordingly.
Well, it's like a memento mori,
Right.
Horror films are a good secular version of memento mori, and what's that? It reminds you that you can die at any moment, and there's any much as I despise the Final Destination films for what they became for a gore fest.
Yeah.
The idea of you shouldn't be alive and therefore death is coming for you.
Right.
That's a good memento mori, because if you really think about it, none of us deserve to be alive. We're all fallen. We're all sinful. The fact that the good Lord hasn't flooded the earth twice is a same God who keeps his promises, because if you look around, the earth should be flooded again. I can't imagine how bad Noah's time must have been, because it often does feel like the inkling of every heart is towards evil today,
Well, I mean, I guess I agree with what you're saying. I do. I would say, if I can give not even pushback, but just maybe a different perspective. I'm not even disagreeing, right? Yes, of course. We're awful. You're awful, right? What's wrong? Was it R.C. Sproul? What's wrong with you people? I think that was him. Yeah. What's wrong with you people?
He's one of those partisans I can never hate.
I
can never
hate him. What's wrong with you people? I think about that myself all the time. What's wrong with me? Oh, I'm a sinner. That's what's wrong with me. Now that's not a hope. It's just it's a confession, right? Like, I do bad things because I'm kind of a bad person. But I would say what is it? I'm gonna kind of butcher it, but bear with me. The Lord flooded the world once with water, right? Second time with blood, third time with fire, I think, right? Like, so this means, and of course, right, obviously this is connected back to, it has a very sacramental connection, right? So the flood is baptism, right? That's baptism that you experience with water. The blood of Christ, right, that floods from Calvary, that's the sacrament that you eat, right? That you take, right? The Eucharist, right? And then the fire, that's the Spirit, right? That comes down upon you and causes regeneration and causes sanctification and all the things that we hope and pray for. So
this reminds me of the Divine Mercy Chaplet, where one of the lines is, "Oh, blood and water was gust forth from the heart of our Lord."
Yep. And I mean, this is it's interesting because when you're dying of crucifixion, you do get blood and water that will come out. So there's actually like a medical understanding of this too, but it's so deeply symbolic, right? In the truest, most mimetic sense, right? Like, that this is that salvation is accomplished by bodily means, right? Of our Lord
eventually,
dying.
You and I need to do a podcast on I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning. We have got to talk to Gerard sometime soon.
I have only read his Scapegoat book. I need to read that other one, so I need to get on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you finish it, I'll read it again, and we can have a podcast on Gerard, because I don't know if there's a more interesting thinker of the last 100 years.
Okay, I'll have to, because I read his Violence and the Sacred and loved it. So I loved that book.
He's so good.
I love that. Actually, today, if I can share, since we're chatting, and since you've given me permission to get a little political, even though we haven't been overly political, I was talking to a friend after church today, and I said, and also on a group chat connected to my church. Not everyone in the church, but just some those of us who are a little bit more on the right, less moderates, and more on the right, like and can talk about things like Schmidt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I am very blessed to find the church I found, which was also providential, in a city this blue. It's pretty cool. You know, I was saying, you know, like I said, I'm talking about the need for swift and state sanctioned, so don't misquote me, violence, but state sanctioned violence against the perpetrators of this heinous assassination. And I said, of course, there's like the moral, ethical component, right? You to talk Protestant for 2 seconds, you can't have gospel without law, right? You must have law before you can have gospel. You have to have both. They're not, you can't tease them apart. And if you're willing to have gospel with no law, you're not talking serious.
Yeah.
And my friend was like, yep, that makes sense. And I said, you know, also it's almost existential from a civilizational perspective, because it's Girardian. You have to allow violence to fall on people who do horrific things. Otherwise, no one will take anything seriously. So I agree with you.
There was a great line from Father Mike Schmitz, who I know you're not a crazy fan of, but
I am not, for other reasons that have nothing to do with. I'm burying that hatchet. It's fine.
and I understand, like, he does a very good job of being for a popular level audience. I have no problem if someone's going to be not up to our, say, standard, but we are, you know, so we're in the for lack of a better term, I say esoteric side of the deeper thing. He is for popular audiences. He is for the millennial mom.
Actually,
you know,
actually, my colleague who I do some Elliot, who I do some podcasts with, he I was complaining about Mike Schmidt one day, and he, who is a Protestant, said, "You realize he's not making content for you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "You're not the target audience." I was like, I know. But I was like, why is it I like all these other Catholic thinkers, but there's something about Mike Schmidt, because he's a nice guy. But I'm like, that's how you're going to understand confession? I mean, I guess, but okay.
Well, he had a great line. And me personally, I put him in if I ever need like a spiritual motivation to get back on the horse, he is great for that.
Perfect.
He had a line.
I would love to get a beer with him. He seems like an awesome guy. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he had a line recently for one of his recent about how to cook stuff. He said, not to be angry would be a defect of humility.
Yes.
This is a great line about righteous anger. The anger ought to compel justice. Righteous anger ought to compel proper actions towards justice. And this is why I try so hard. Whenever I'm on Twitter, I try to avoid rage tweeting, because if you're tweeting your anger on Twitter, you're not actually angry. You are just tweeting your annoyance. And Twitter will serve only. Twitter is great. I love Twitter. Twitter reflects reality. It is real life in a sense, but it's also a trap that will suck your energy that ought to motivate you to action. If you're not gonna, if instead of going to your local town council to get involved in politics or to organize something, you're gonna just tweet your vitriolic rage about why liberals should die and suffer online, you're not actually accomplishing. Okay, I'm back. Let me write down this new time.
Okay, because I have I could have helped. Great. You probably could have just texted me and I could have kept going, but you can edit it out. Yeah. No problem.
This is going great. This is a lot of fun. This is a great episode.
Let me know, because I'm just vibing on Sherry here, and I'm like, I actually have a whole point about this. If I can give there's a whole. Let me know when we're starting again. I'll just jump in.
I'll let you know. 40, and go.
Yeah, I didn't see that bit from Father Schmitz, but I'm glad he did that. I'm not trying to get vitriolic, but I have been noticing some what I would call counter signaling from certain Christian clergy on Twitter, which I find a little confusing is the most charitable word I would use for that. And I think that's me trying to be charitable. I don't understand why you would post that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really pregnant question. Like, can you please answer me? I know that I look at this, Caleb. I'm burying hatchets left and right, both to the Catholics and to the Orthos and to the Calvinists. I've said nice thing about Calvinists on this stream, and I'm going to say another nice thing about Calvinists. You ready? It's a historical moment, everyone. Doc Brown is being nice to Calvinists, because in reality, it was mostly kayfabe, and I actually kind of like Calvinists. I come from a long line of them in my family, at least. Not in my life, but in my family. Family history, at least, being so Scotch Irish and stuff like that. But the most consistent on the in the Protestant sphere, because I'm not deep into the Catholic stuff like you guys are. I mean, I follow it, but it's more like, you know, here and there, right? Like, oh, Trent said something, I will like look at what he said. It's not like, you know, I'm not into the esoteric parts of American
I
Catholicism.
don't even follow Trent anymore. I can't. I don't know what it was, but somewhere I think it was a friend of mine, Jeremy Kubas of Contras and Tailors, who was a really, really awesome guy. I love him to death. He got into an argument with Trent, and Trent, instead of engaging with any of the arguments, decided to critique the vulgarity involved in Jeremy's argument. And it's like, dude, that could be a second tweet. You should engage the argument, and in a second tweet say you shouldn't be vulgar. But to ignore the actual argument in favor of critiquing the vulgarity is very muzzly, and that's gay. You're a man.
Yeah, I'm not involved in that fight, so I guess I can say, and I mean this in the most truest sense. So I don't know no subtext. I'm really glad his wife is doing better, because that worried me. And I'm really
thank God for his wife is doing better.
I was Protestants were praying about that to any of the Tradcats who think we hate you all the time. We don't hate you all the time. We just disagree with you vehemently. There's a difference.
Yes.
I can give some. So their hatchet is being buried with some of the, not you guys, some of the Tradcats. Look at us go, right? Look at us go for Christian unity here. To bury a hatchet with the Calvinists, I will say, at least on Twitter, for whatever that's worth, the most consistent messaging from thinkers, leaders, and or pastors. Sometimes those are the same thing. Sometimes they're different. In the Calvinist sphere, has been from, well, like rather, let's say in relation to what has happened, the current historical moment in which we find ourselves, has been from the Calvinists. So I give the based right-wing Presbyterians all the credit. So you just said that thing about from Father Mike Schmitz. There's a thing from I don't know if anyone follows him, Brian Sauvé, about he had this little video, but basically the tagline on it, I'll just read the tweet, is even righteous anger must be quickly turned to righteous action, lest it curdle into unrighteousness.
Yes.
And I loved that, because it's talking about the time preference, basically, right? Of like, you can't just like, to be angry and not sin is not to just let things go unanswered. That's not what we're talking about here. Like, there has to be a absolute demand, a continual demand for justice, which is not just rage in the streets, right? We're not talking about, but actual true, let's say maybe temporal in this case, right? Justice to be meted out by the appropriate authority. I think that's been very good. I see the Calvinists are far more consistent in this, and it's probably because they're autistic, and God bless them for being autistic Calvinists. I'm calling out a little bit of my own camp here, the more sort of high church, even the conservative high church Protestants. There's kind of this, not really equivocation, but this, well, we're all sinners and we need to be careful about anger and all these things. And I'm like, I don't necessarily disagree with your words, but I kind of can't help but wonder why you're phrasing it in this way, right? At this time. And why aren't you explicitly calling out not only the evil of the action, but the deeper evil, really, if you think about it, of the like thousands of people reveling in it? I don't understand that. Like, why aren't we calling that out? So some people are more consistent about it than others, and I'm not trying to call out individual denominations in total. Obviously, I've seen some cringe Catholic takes on it too. Particularly as it pertains to capital punishment. I will remind everyone, I know I'm in a Catholic space, so I got to be careful, but I'll remind everyone that the Vatican used to have an executioner. So that's all I got to say to that. It's a
I will say real quick, there is no issue regarding Christian theology that I am more torn on than the death penalty. If you ask me hour by hour, my opinion would be different. I saw a tweet from an atheist guy who said, hey, MAGA, if the Charlie Kirk shooter converted to Christianity, would you still call for his death?
Yes.
And my thought was, it'd actually be easier. It'd be so much easier to say that this guy should get the death penalty if he was a Christian.
Well,
It's
I would say
harder to say it for atheists.
I think it's I think what's interesting here. If you got some time, we can noodle this over. I think we're actually getting on the fly, kind of in our own vibey way, to the maybe a core. Not even necessarily. I think it's a theological difference about how salvation works. So it's a soteriological difference, I think, but it's also kind of a cultural difference between Catholics and Protestants. At least, let's say, American Protestants and American Catholics. Let's just speak as Americans. This is a topic about dark American whimsy. So we're going to get into the death penalty too, which is very American. we have it here. So much death penalty. That's a joke. It's a joke. It's a dark joke, but. I think I would say, this is how I know I'm just Protestant at heart, because I'm like, God's grace and forgiveness does not preclude temporal punishment.
Yeah.
I want temporal punishment to match the crime. And I think that Catholics would agree with me on this, right? So far.
I think we would.
We would. I would just maybe say there are things that maybe warrant the death penalty that nobody will ever be killed for. We live in a fallen world, and our governmental systems are not fully under the control of Christ yet, but the kingdom is coming. It's not going to come because I or anyone else makes it come. It's going to come, and it's going to arrive because Christ is making it come and arrive. As things stand, there are some things that probably deserve the death penalty.
Yeah, they absolutely are.
I can't, in good faith, completely. In a way, we all deserve the death penalty. In a way, we will all receive it, and that we will die. So I guess maybe on a temporal, we would, and from a Protestant perspective, a left-hand kingdom, meaning of this world, right? Not the eternal kingdom, but of this world. From our left-hand perspective, the temporal time perspective that we inhabit, right? Like the world as we currently, the chronological time. There is a place for punishment. And sometimes, ideally, that punishment is restorative, and sometimes you can't restore. You can't bring someone back. And I'm not saying every single death needs to be punished in death. What I'm saying is some do. And as
a matter of justice, it is
this one counts. And I will also say I am 100% being absolutely biased.
Yeah.
Because
true.
Because it's our tribe that was affected. So and it's biased, but that's my honest. I understand why Catholics are saying no death penalty even for this guy, and I understand they're being consistent, and I appreciate your consistency. I think it's good to be consistent with the teachings of your church. I just happen to disagree with this.
See, when it comes to the death penalty, I completely understand the need for it as a matter of justice, in either in a recompense sort of way, or as a matter of removing someone who was continually incapable of not harming others, removing them from the stage, as it were. And when it comes to the death penalty, my position has always been, this is where the conflict comes into play. Okay. I if everyone was Christian, I would have zero problem with it. But it's the matter of the non-believer, where I don't think it is as a matter of self-defense or war. I understand that non-Christians can be killed by self-defense and war, and that is justified in the sense of self-preservation or the protection of one's family or one's homeland. But there's a difference between a state-sanctioned, organized killing with forethought, but of a non-believer, knowing full well you are damning him to hell. This is where it gets
difference. Yeah,
this is where it gets very tricky for me, because I'm like, I don't know.
I don't damn or save anyone. And that's the most Protestant thing I maybe have ever said in my life, but there we go.
And I do get the sense that is true, that it's not up to us, up to the Holy Spirit, it's up to God, but
I don't damn or save myself, and I don't damn or save anyone else.
I can't rationally think of an argument in which I can argue the state has the right to kill someone knowing that they are unsaved.
I just this is
but at the exact same time, part of me goes, but you can't force conversion, and people have to be removed from society for the safety of others.
Well,
You know, and so I go back and forth every day. Every time the topic comes up, every hour, I feel like I think about it all the time.
I guess this.
I
I
can
guess this.
never come to a conclusion on it, and I thank the
Well,
Lord that I never have to make that decision myself.
yeah, no, I don't. I don't say this in a gleeful way. I'm trying to, I'm just I'm getting to trying to get to the core of this at least.
Mhm.
I think this has to get down. I think this gets down to, and I'm not a great expert, and I mean, I am interested in it, and I read about it, and I do have Catholic friends, obviously, but I would never claim to be an expert in Catholicism, right? Like, I don't
Mhm.
claim that for a lot of. I only claim to be an expert in like two things. So this is large. I don't claim to be an expert in my own tradition, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is just me. And I think you'd probably be in this. You'd have the same level of like humility, right? In terms of like what we like the interest, the intricacies of theology is, and as it pertains to like government action in particular, is
Mhm.
very tricky.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I guess it gets down to what is the purpose of the law, and maybe we mean that in a lowercase l,
Mhm.
but an uppercase L, right? Like, why do we have the law, right? Like, why does God set the law before us, right? In that Deuteronomy sense, I have set the law before you, right? Like,
Mhm.
why does God do that? Is it to make us better people? Or is it to show us how we're kind of not really good people at all?
Yeah.
Right. And I, as a Protestant, I'm like, yeah, like, great, right? Like, I can say, well, I've never killed anybody. I'm like, but have you gotten angry at someone? Oh, all the
Mhm.
time, right? Oh, well, you're kind of like a low key murderer now. Oh, well, okay. What do I,
If we apply the same
yeah,
standard for adultery to murder, we're all murderers in a
right,
sense, you know?
right,
And it's
right. And like I said, we will all receive the death penalty and that we will all die.
Mhm.
But what we're talking about with this case of like death penalty, right? At least as it particularly pertains, I would say, let's just constrain it to our current bit of American dark whimsy. We're still talking about dark whimsy, folks.
Mhm.
The Kirk assassination. It's like, I'll make an argument. Why do I think his killers,
Mhm.
plural,
Yep.
that will really get your channel shut down, plural,
Mhm.
why do they deserve this? They, and I don't just mean a they, them, I mean they,
Mhm.
plural. Perhaps our greatest ally, perhaps someone else, who knows? Who knows? Why do they deserve it? And it's because it has to do with a distinct desire to interrupt the godly pursuits of our people.
Mm.
And it actually has to do, I will say this as a regenerated, still kind of degenerate pagan at heart, right? It actually, this kind of leftist transgender ideology is designed to damn people.
Mhm.
It's designed to put people in hell.
Yeah.
And why would I not hate that with what David calls perfect hatred?
Mm.
Right now, I try and fail to not hate the people. It's hard for me to do that. But I used to be a much different person than I am today. And so I always try to, I mean, I try to hold that Gandalf tension about Gollum, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're not that different, Frodo, from
That's
Gollum.
that's a perfect example, honestly, of when it comes to the death penalty is Gandalf's lines about Gollum,
But
and
when
it's so
Gollum
tricky.
is choking Samwise to
Mhm.
get the ring, I don't know if I think Samwise almost has a duty, if he can, or
Yeah.
let's say Frodo has a duty in that scene, if he can, to at the bare minimum pull Sting and put it to Gollum's throat. Now, think
Yes.
about pulling a weapon, and I mean this in the most esoteric, spiritual sense possible. To draw a sword, to draw any weapon, but to draw a sword, to use a biblical, metaphor, to draw a sword is a profoundly supernatural thing, right?
Yes.
To unsheath a weapon is a profoundly supernatural thing, whether that's a literal weapon, whether it's a metaphorical weapon,
Mhm.
right? A meme that you post is a weapon. Like, it's all a weapon, and that's not a bad thing, but it is a weapon. When you draw a weapon, you need to be absolutely fully committed to using it,
Yeah.
with the distinct hope and prayer that you don't have to. And what I
Yes.
worry is that if we start pushing away from even the contemplating the death penalty, we will become unwilling and really cowardly in the appropriate people who are authorized to do that will become cowardly in their use of the sword.
Mhm.
And what you get is what we have. I would argue that that's actually what we're dealing with now. It's almost too late. I feel like I respect the Catholic position, but it's almost like too late for that. We're well beyond that. We're at the point where people haven't been brave enough to even draw a sword, let alone use a sword in an
Mhm.
appropriate way. And I mean this in the most deep chivalric sense, right? So if you have knights who will not even draw a sword, and if they draw a sword, won't use a sword, why do you have knights?
Mhm.
And as it pertains to this case, at least in particular, that's my. I'm not saying let's revel in death. What I'm saying is there's a place for it. That's all I'm saying.
No, and I will absolutely say this: if forced conversions worked, because I do believe forced conversions work as in long term. Like if the Catholics were to conquer an area and then force everyone to convert, by the third generation, it's no longer forced in a sense. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
third generation Aztecs were Catholic; they weren't Aztec. But
I mean,
it's
third
oh,
generation Saxons were Christian or
yes,
Catholic at the time. I mean, it's
yes,
so
and
early.
so
Yeah.
it becomes like if forced conversions were permissible by the church, and we could just like forcibly baptize the person before killing them, I would have no problem. But that's not how it works, unfortunately. And so
Yeah.
again, when it comes to the death penalty, I can rationally understand it. I understand the desire for it. I understand the need for it, and it just I don't know, because if you asked me yesterday, if you asked me the day the shooting happened, I would have been like, yes, absolutely. Then you asked me the next day, I would have been like, no. The next day would have been like, absolutely. And I go back and forth on it.
That's
And
interesting.
I
That's
insist.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
thank the good Lord up above. It is not my as much as the show is propaganda and just sour arguments. West Wing had a very very good episode on the death penalty, and what someone was going to be executed, and the president could stop it, and he didn't know what to do, and he kept asking different people. He called his priest in, he called his friends in, he made different phone calls to foreign leaders, and by the end of the episode, he's like, instead of dealing with the problem, I asked people how to deal with the problem for so long, it no longer became a problem because it already happened.
Yeah, and I do think. Well, I'm trying
And
to be.
I
I'm
don't
trying to
know.
be kind and charitable, but I'm not saying Catholics. I'm saying some Catholics on Twitter
Mhm.
have been driving me up the walls about this. I'm like, what is happening? You conquered like half the world for Christ. Why can't you just get on? Like, I don't know how to make you
I won't counter
understand.
signal the death penalty. That's a set
Yeah.
for I'm not going to counter signal the death penalty because
Yeah.
at the very least, I understand the political or rational need for it, and you could say that God can judge me like this is going to be a hot take. Someone tweeted out, "We shouldn't encourage trans people to kill themselves," and I commented, "Yes, we shouldn't." And
Interesting.
God could judge me for that later, but at this point, every trans death means Christian schools are safer from
That
mass
is
shootings.
okay. Yeah, I can.
And
Yeah,
God can judge me for it, and I'm probably in the wrong. But
I
if you
don't
ask me to
know.
decide
I
between
don't
a
know if
trans
you're in the
person
wrong.
and Christian
I think
children, I don't know. I don't know, man. This is one
you
of those issues where I can spend hours talking, and I don't
you
know.
should never feel good about using force, but you should also feel you should never feel good about using force, but you should also never feel good about being cowardly.
Yes, and it's
And to
the
be a
golden
moral
mean on
coward,
this one is
to be a moral
impossible for me to
coward
locate.
is bad.
Yes. And I mean, I'm an Aristotelian. When it comes to finding virtues, always in the golden mean. I can't find the golden mean in something as permanent as death. And
Well,
so this is where I just throw my hands up and go, it's not my decision, and thank God.
yeah, and that's God bless you, Catholics. That's the most Catholic answer I've ever heard. And my priest will deal with it. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm not even
Yes.
against that response. I'm like, if you don't feel like you can handle it, that's fine. I think that's actually probably the more honest answer, right? I got to be so careful what I say here. I don't want to get your channel taken down. I got to be so careful. Let's
This is a
just say
very
I come
tricky
from a
conversation.
staunchly Protestant background, and there is this sense. I think it's probably even more cultural than it is theological. There is this sense of trust in God and keep the powder dry, meaning that, like, why do we have the law? From a Protestant perspective, we have the law to constrain evil. It's not to make good. The law does not make good. The law does not make holy. The law condemns. The law judges. By the way, condemning sin, judging sinners, not a bad thing. By the way,
Mhm.
you are also one of those people. So bear
Yes.
all of this in mind. But the law is not there to save your ass. You can't do a fucking lawyer. You can't lawyer God, as a
Mhm.
certain group of people love to try to do. You can
Sabbath
edit that out.
lights.
You can edit that out if you want to, but you can't
No,
lawyer
this is
God.
a common theme on this podcast of
Yeah,
how fucking
cannot
stupid and how much I
lawyer
hate
God.
Shabbos lights.
Yeah, you can't lawyer God. That's not
Mhm.
how it works. If you think you can lawyer God, you don't respect Moses. Okay?
Yes.
Just telling you, if you care about Moses, then you can't lawyer God. Okay?
Mhm.
It's the most, I say that with all the love, by the way, for certain groups of people, because I actually care about them and I don't want them to fall into this trap, because I fall into this trap all the time. If I
Mhm.
just maybe feel a certain way about an action, it'll come okay. Yeah, no. That's not how that works, right?
Yeah.
Like, we always, the human mind's ability to continually justify using the law, by the way,
Mhm.
certain actions is horrendous, right? Like, we're all what is it? What did good Lord, Caleb? I'm sounding like a Calvinist. I'm saying good things about Calvin. I'm going to quote Calvin here. What did Calvin say? The human heart is a forge of idols, right? Like, I'm really good at that. And I'm smart, so I'm even better at it in some ways. I'm even worse at this because I'm really good at
Let me
justifying.
ask you, do you ever wish you were dumber so you wouldn't have to worry as much?
Um,
I often feel like what's the
no.
scripture verse? What is the scripture verse about the rich man and the eye of the camel?
Oh yeah, it's easier to go for the rich. Well, okay. So here's the thing about the rich man and the camel, right?
Mhm.
We're all the rich man, because why is
Yes.
the man rich because he has a lot of money, or is the man rich because he cares about his money? He's
Mhm.
rich because he cares about his money, right?
There's,
The money is his god.
yeah.
I was just
there's
saying,
a
yeah.
there's a
I was
great
just
Chesterton line where it's the rich people heard. I'm gonna paraphrase the quote and butcher it, but rich people heard it was easier for a rich man to get into. It was easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And the solution was to genetically engineer smaller cameras and manufacture larger needles.
well said. Yeah, I'm very thoroughly Kierkegaard. I love Kierkegaard. I'm thoroughly
He's
Kierkegaardian.
great.
If you think you're not the rich man, you're reading it wrong.
Peter Kreeft, I don't know if you read him or not, but he's a Catholic philosopher, and
Yeah.
he had a great line, and he said, God gave Protestants Kierkegaard because they needed a second Augustine.
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Both of those are some of my favorite.
Yes,
Favorite
Kierkegaard
writers.
is.
Yeah.
Every time I read Kierkegaard, I'm like, man, I do not feel smart enough to be reading this guy, but he's so good.
I'll probably butcher the quote a little bit, but to do my best at just off the top of my head, Kierkegaard had a great quote that I actually saw go out right after in the hours following the assassination. A tyrant dies and his reign ends. A martyr dies and his reign begins.
Ooh, so good.
Yep.
So good.
Yep.
I love Kierkegaard. We gotta do a Kierkegaard podcast sooner or later.
Do.
We gotta do a book club on.
The way Protestants read the Bible is, I think this just gets down to the way we read the Bibles very differently, right? Like, if you think you're not the prodigal son, you're reading it wrong, right?
Yes.
If you think you're not the rich man, you're reading it wrong. If you
Yes.
think you're right? Like, if you think you're not Adam, you're reading it wrong. If you think you're not Peter, you're reading it wrong.
If you think you're not Judas, you're reading it wrong.
You're reading it wrong. Amen. Right? Like, amen. Like, please let the reader understand. Right?
This might be an opening the door to a 2-hour conversation, but when it comes to Judas, anyone who speaks with certainty of his eternal fate bugs me.
Yes, I agree.
We should all be praying and hoping beyond hope that Judas is in heaven. Is he not? I don't know. I can't answer that, and no one can. But anyone hoping he is in hell is wrong, and anyone saying he is in heaven with certainty is also wrong.
And
we can only hope.
And my stance on this whole situation, and I'm not saying I'm doing a good job of it, because I'm not. I'll confess it that I'm not. I'm not doing a good job of this. I have a lot of issues with anger. I think the anger is good. I have a lot of issues with letting anger go into hatred. That's hard for me. It's hard for a lot of people, but it's hard for me. I oftentimes previously in my life, I fell into the another trap of going, well, I don't want I'm angry that so-and-so, such a person did this heinous thing, but I don't want to have anger in my heart, so I will just have love. And that was a trap that I fell into. And because I didn't hold law and gospel in tension with one another. And so my current thing that I'm attempting to do, and I'm praying that I get better at doing, is saying, if you're involved in violent insurrection that specifically that targets Christians, I feel so bad for you to be in a state where you have so much hatred for goodness, truth, and beauty in your heart. I also have been in a place like that before. Now, I never did anything like violent, but like I know what that's like to be in that place. And I feel like I have all sympathy for you, but I have absolutely jack shit zero sympathy for what you're doing, and you deserve to be stopped by any means necessary. Those things make no sense, quote unquote, holding them together in my head, but I hold them in my head because life doesn't need, there's whimsy, because see, that's how I'm tying it back. There's a whimsy to it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I know the salvation isn't something you understand. It's something you experience. And we understand from the Bible and from the tradition. I'll give the Catholics some credit, from the tradition we've inherited. There's law and there's gospel. They coexist. They are constantly in tension. Things like the Bible is not some sort of scientific document, right? That is to be understood mechanically. Here I go saying some bad things. Look at that about Calvinists. Calvinists tend to view it as some sort of clockwork device, right? That you can like predict who will be saved and who will not be saved. No, if we are truly saved extra nos, outside of ourselves, then this is something that is ultimately up to God. Why do we have law? Why do we have, as Americans, this strange attraction to the dark and to the macabre? It's because we maybe realize, living in this country that has had this crazy history, that continues to have a crazy history, that like there's a lot of stuff that's going on beyond our control. We will eventually die. We are repulsed and attracted to that, right? I can't. It's endlessly fascinating. Ultimately, you know, you and I could sit and talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and we still wouldn't make quote sense of it. But that's okay. I mean, I don't know what the Catholic stance on that is, but Protestants don't need to have a. We need to have a working understanding of how salvation works. We need to have a working understanding of what the Bible says, but we will not know everything. There's a lot of unknowns. We need to be
Catholics we have the divine mysteries. We have the things that you're never going to understand.
Yeah. But my only big issue, I know it was a huge long aside. My only issue is when people both on Protestant side and on Catholic side and both on right and left the political spectrum and in the middle kind of like throw away any temporal consequences because of Jesus loves you. And I'm like, yeah, but these are not mutually exclusive.
This is something I've said several times, and this is a direct example of the people who think Jesus was a hippie who just preached love only,
Yes.
Not understanding what love is. They confuse love with niceness, and niceness has to do with being polite. It's nothing to do with loving.
Yes.
Is that our Lord and Savior told us to love our enemies, and too many Christians are so scared of making enemies they can't love anyone. Loving involves willing to good, and if you're not willing to actually help someone because it'd be unkind, you're not showing love.
True, and I'm guilty of that. Oftentimes, I don't do the good because I'm worried about hurting someone's feelings. It's the downside of being polite. It's the downside of being the Anglo-cultural thing that I have, right? It's the downside of this.
This is where, again, there's a whole essay I want to write on the contention between the dichotomy of vulgarity and politeness in regards to love. Because I have a whole argument for a defense of vulgarity. Because have you ever heard the comedian James McCann?
No, I have not.
He's a really funny Catholic comedian. But he's not like overtly Catholic. But one of his main bits that he did on his last special was about how condoms are kind of gross, and actually ejaculating in your wife is incredible and a good thing to do. And he's just making it's very crude, it's very vulgar, but it is in a sense a very anti-contraception joke that people hear and go, yeah, it is kind of gross to wrap it in rubber. And it's like he's being super vulgar about it, but if the vulgarity cuts through the simulacrum of fake words that people love to use today,
I can respect that.
A good thing, and that's where the defense and vulgarity, that we have so many fake terms, like the sodomist act of sticking your dick in an anus is defined as loving gay sex. There's nothing loving about sodomy.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I'm not even getting into the you're letting some there's like Claymore Mines poster. I'm like, don't touch the. I can respect the joke about the I'm not even getting into the contraception. I'm not even dealing with it. I'm just like I'm so tired. Like I'm not even
Again, we are all about unity and Christian love after
you
Cook's assassination. And it's
only
time to come
fair.
together.
It's only fair because I did the jab about Aquinas agreeing with Luther on the Eucharist, but and that Luther might have been even inspired, or particularly not even Luther. Let's say Cranmer being inspired by Aquinas to write what he wrote. But anyhow, so it's only fair. It's only fair that you get me back. I get it. Yeah. We're all just sparring. No, but no, I agree. I mean, calling things for what they are, right? Like, what is it? Luther says in the Heidelberg Disputation that a theologian of the cross calls things what they are, right? He calls good, and bad, bad.
I can never hate Luther. Is means is maybe one of the greatest theological statements ever written.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the problem with is means is it's really hard to even have a conversation surrounding it because it's so autistic. But
it's so autistic. Like, I love it. I cannot. There's a great book from Zachariah Tarn called The Three Reformers where he argues Luther reformed religion, which led to the Reformation of philosophy, and Descartes, which led to the Reformation of the political order, and Rousseau. And it's a great book. But I read it and I'm like, this is a Frenchman's take on a German person.
Yeah,
he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the German.
Yeah, never trust. Well, and I mean, I know I've said something nice about Calvin, but remember that Calvin was French and never trust the French. So it's just,
There is something to be said for the virtue of the American multicultural and as a descendant of Europeans that we have a good understanding of all European styles because we have a mix of all European styles.
Well, and that's interesting because, you know, if we want to tie it back into dark whimsy, well, this is a twisting, winding path. So you can edit this however you want to or not. I don't really care. You can speaking of raw dogging, you can raw dog this episode. I don't care.
I will be. There's gonna be zero editing in this one.
I love it. We're raw dog. We're doing it live. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, as Americans, we kind of have this, I think maybe could we call it a meta awareness of different European sensibilities, maybe, because we are Anglophone and broadly English, but we got a fair amount of Catholics. We have some Jews. We have a lot of different types of Protestants, some of whom were like at each other's throats literally up until recently.
The way I explain Americanism, in a sense, is that in the same way all Europeans are a carryover or descendants of the Roman Empire, we are all descendants and carryovers of Christendom. True. And we have a very similar, you know, I mean, I think it's completely fair to say Rome, Europe, America.
Yeah,
Rome, Europe, Christendom, America. That's the same storyline.
Rome, Europe, Christendom, England, America, and then Europe into America. So
that is fair.
I would privilege.
I would stretch England out to include Scotland and the Cavaliers and all the people, the four different groups that came over to America.
Yes.
Everyone listening, go check out Avalon Seed and check out the Old Glory Club's podcast on that. That's a great episode. Great series.
That book is on my short list. I'm going to start reading it soon.
It's on my Audible wish list, and I was gonna get it this time, but then I found out about this 3-volume Civil War history, and I'm like, damn it! I just watched Gettysburg. I can't help it. I have to do this.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that meta awareness of Americans as it pertains to Europeans connects back to dark whimsy. So one of my favorite authors and one of the greatest American authors of all time. So, you know, if you think about dark whimsy, but also we could call it Gothic whimsy, the Gothic is my favorite genre of literature. Gothic literature by far.
Have you read any Flannery O'Connor?
Oh yeah, she's Gothic.
Okay,
total Goth.
Yes, totally goss.
Yeah. By the way, I need to have you or someone on my show to talk about A Good Man Is Hard to Find. Is the grandmother...
I know the perfect guest for that. My friend Luke is a huge Catholic and Flannery O'Connor fan. You would love to talk to Luke about Flannery O'Connor. I'll put you in touch.
I'll tease this with the question that I still have no answer to. The grandma at the end, I'm trying not to spoil the story, of A Good Man Is Hard to Find. Is she praying or blaspheming, or is there even a distinction in that moment? That's my question, and I don't even want an answer because I love that it's not answered for you. You know, Luther said that blasphemers were closer to God than the atheists. because at least they believe that God is real and it could do something. Yeah, so have me on sometime. We could do Flannery O'Connor. But if you think about O'Connor, great author, you think about, she's in a long line of American Gothic writers. The big head honcho is obviously Edgar Allan Poe, right? Like, come on, like, he's the guy.
I read some of his poetry this morning for a poetry podcast,
You don't
and
have
he's so
Lovecraft
great.
without Poe, right? And like, you got to have Poe. It's interesting because Poe, everyone, okay. I love English Gothic. I do. I love English Gothic because it is so thoroughly English and it is so thoroughly Protestant. I've just thrown a gauntlet to some people. It's so thoroughly Protestant, but people in Europe forget the American contribution to Gothic, because you kind of don't have a fully fleshed Gothic in Europe without Edgar Allan Poe. Because, Caleb, do you know, aside from he kind of got a mixed response in America when he was alive. He wasn't, I mean, he drank away a lot of his earnings, but he wasn't he was well known, but maybe not well loved. He was a very contentious literary figure, obviously for obvious reasons. So salacious and vulgar, speaking of vulgarity, right? But guess who loved the shit out of Poe and still loves Poe? The French.
Really?
The French. Yes. So Poe was exported to France, I believe in translation. Yes, he was translated into French. So the French, while he was alive, fell in love with Poe.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. While he was
alive,
he didn't live a long life. So like while he was alive, the French went, and like when he died, they went really gaga. I mean, for Poe. And then the French, so Poe had like huge influence on French, at least certain kinds of more over the top French stuff. So if you think about like the Grand Guignol tradition, I don't know if you know anything about this kind of theater. There's the Grand Guignol theater in Paris, but these kind of salacious horror shows that were popular, and like the fin de siècle, like the end of the century in France, which is, by the way, connects back into like what stuff that Bird and Paz are talking about with the explosion of French occultism and all this stuff, like the insane gore, guts, violence, boobs, beheadings, all the stuff that, like, many people have tied this is not my work, many people have tied this to so maybe an innate French bloodlust, if I can be so bold. Don't worry, Americans also have bloodlust, but
yes,
but this, like, that Poe kind of gave some verbiage, some words for like this kind of put things into words that maybe the French were feeling, because in the 1800s, right, they're recovering from the revolution, still from Napoleon, still from the, they've gone through however many governments at this point, I can't even keep track. I'm not, France is a confusing place. Great wine, confusing people, something like that. But like Poe, they're not even reading Poe in English, they're reading him translated, but they still, like, there's this like, oh, of course you would find a heart under the floorboard, right? That makes perfect sense to me as a Frenchman. It's very fascinating that this distinctly, I would say, American man who had a lot of dark whimsy. I mean, Poe is perhaps I think
the embodiment of the American whimsy.
I'm not saying he's a saint, but I would say he's a saint of American literature, particularly of the American dark literature, right? You don't get an O'Connor without a Poe. Like I said, you don't get a Lovecraft without a Poe. You don't get a McCarthy. You don't get a Cormac McCarthy without a Poe, right? Like you don't get a
there's a whole conversation to be had about Blood Meridian in regards to American Gothic whimsy.
Well, and it's interesting. I know we've talked about so many things, but Blood Meridian was what kept coming through my mind as I was thinking about this live stream. And I didn't want to over prepare. I just wanted to kind of intuitively shoot from the hip. But yeah, Blood Meridian, I highly recommend that book to everyone. Say what you want about McCarthy's private life. He was a damn good writer. And his lack of punctuation is terrifying in its own way. You kind of don't know what's going on, and that's all on purpose. Something like a whole, like, it feels like a quarter of the dialogue is actually in Spanish with no translation, which is bold, bold and courageous to do that, because these are Americans in Mexico doing crazy shit, and they don't know what's going. They don't understand the dialogue, so neither do you unless you speak Spanish. When I was reading that book, I was like, thank God I had high school Spanish so I could know what was going on. I was like, oh, I know what they're saying, right? Like I was like, oh, okay. Mejor los indios, right? The Indians are better than these Americans who come down and do these things, right? Like that's such a good book. Yeah, we should do a whole episode on it someday. It's
so we got to get Bodes for that one though, because Bodes is a big Bukowski guy. We got to get Bodes for.
And that would, and I think I've said this to you guys before, that story, that book connects back into other later works of fiction, such as Sicario, such as No Country for Old Men, which is also of obviously a McCarthy novel that was then turned into to the Coen Brothers movie. But
and I'll say it, top 5 American film.
Yeah, it's just
I'll put it up there. Top 5 American movies.
Yeah. No Country. You said you don't really get Texas. That's fine, because that movie gets Texas. That's the most distinctly Texan film I've ever seen. I'm like,
I'll say this: maybe one of the greatest endings to a movie ever is Tommy Lee Jones' scenes in the end of No Country for Old Men. That is Tommy Lee Jones, man. What a great actor.
Yeah. And somebody who could do that role because he's also bilingual in Spanish, because he grew up in the Rio Grande Valley and all. Yeah, it's just he's in any case, dark whimsy, it's baked into America.
Yes.
And we have exported it like to other places in the world. Like this is why you get like Korean slasher films, right? And it's also why you get Korean zombie films. Train to Busan, anyone?
Dude, Korean horror films. I mean, there is something to be said for the Asians' ability to immediately adopt mimetic systems of foreigners and then perfect.
Yes.
There is an insane gift in the. I mean, look at Japan pre World War II, World War II, post World War II. What an insane transformation!
It's insane transformation. I mean, well, shit. I'll talk about at least half my tribe. I have a few tribes. I have many tribes within me. Look at the Philippines under the Spanish. Yeah, and then look at them during the American occupation, much better, and look at them post-American population having a lot of problems. That's all I will say. I
can't remember who said this, but someone said Japan doesn't actually have its own culture, because even Japanese high culture was just a mimetic copy of Chinese high culture.
Yeah.
And this is gonna be a hot take. I won't say defense, but my account for Unit 747 and the Japanese colonization of China was that it was a European colonization that lacked the priests to do missionary work. There was no Christian There was no Christianity to temper the colonization.
Yeah, maybe you can make an argument that you really can't colonize with Shintoism, right? Like it doesn't work well as a colonial religion. I think that I would buy that. I think
have you read or heard of the bells of Nagasaki?
I know something of I know that it was targeted I know that it was targeted for a reason. I know that it had a Catholic minority. I've read the book Silence by Shusaku Endo, and I like the movie a lot. So yeah,
there's a great book called Bells of Nagasaki, and it's about a Japanese man raised in Shintoism, raised to be a doctor, became an atheist, and when his mom died, realized, okay, there has to be something after death. Clearly, because energy cannot just dissipate. There has to be somewhere where this goes. And so he just went to Tokyo to study, went to Nagasaki to study to be an X-ray tech. And he just knocked on the door of a random Christian family and was like, hey, can I live here while I go to school in your attic? And they're like, sure, go right ahead. And this is my favorite. This is maybe my top 5 favorite Christian lines ever. It was Christmas Eve, and the family invited him to a Christmas Eve mass. And he said, I don't know if I should go. I'm not a Christian. And the dad said, neither would a wise man. Come on.
Yeah, that's a good line.
That's such a great fucking line.
It's also very Japanese. That's such a Japanese response.
Yes. I recommend everyone listening. Go. There was a during Lent, Hallow did a prayer series when they would read chapters from the Bells of Nagasaki. And I recommend everybody pick up that book because it's a beautiful window into the Japanese Catholic mind.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think I know we're well afield, but that's fine. You
Yeah.
know,
I still have one more thing I want to bring up and get
yeah,
into.
yeah.
So it might spark a longer conversation, but I want to.
Well, we could deal with it as much as we can and table it for later. I mean, So go.
So
What do you got to say?
I want to compare. So C.K. Chesterton in his short history of the English people, which is a fantastic history book I recommend to people. In his second chapter, he goes from how did people who were living under Roman law with Roman rules and were not very whimsical with belief in demons and monsters, when Rome fell, was in the same century, it was in the same like decade. Everyone went from Roman law and Roman roads to goblins in the woods, giants hunting you, trolls, and monsters. And his argument has to do kind of with the when you have the absence of the system of law and the system that protects you, as in the Roman legions, you begin to, how does he put it? He puts it, I'm going to butcher his line, but it's something along the lines of you go from Franks in the woods to, from Celts in the woods to goblins in the woods being slain by King Arthur. And he has a whole take on King Arthur has been born out of the absence of the Roman legions to provide defense, and they had to have a new symbol to put their trust in for protection, and that became King Arthur.
Yeah,
and then as history proceeded, King Arthur became kind of real. I believe he was real in a sense. Became real that he was the founder of Anglicanism. He was the ancestor of all the kings.
Well, this is and I'm glad you referenced the meme that Anglicans love to do, right? Because certain tradcasts will go, King Henry VIII just wanted to have a divorce, and that's why you have your church. And I'm like, regardless of your opinion about Henry VIII, I understand why Catholics have beef with him because of the monastery thing. But I'm like, regardless of all of that, come on, that is not an argument. That's like just a meme, right?
Yeah.
And so my response to these people is always just equally memey, which is no, it wasn't King Henry VIII, it was King Arthur.
I put full stock into this as being true, that Joseph of Arimathea, or however you say it, was a traitor and was the uncle of our Lord and Savior. And when Jesus was a youth, he traveled to Britain in a trade route and brought Christianity to the.
It could be.
It's so cool that I'm like, no, it's so cool. It's true, even if it's false.
I would say it's mimetically true, and that doesn't mean it's not true. What I mean is it's true in the sense that King Arthur, bare minimum, King Arthur is a symbol, and I mean that in the most Jonathan Pajot, spooky supernatural sense. King Arthur is a symbol of a British king, a king in Britain who is Christian, right? And so if he's also a symbol of Christian authority in Britain, and so why wouldn't he be the one who founded the Anglican Church? Although, right, obviously Anglicans, to drop the kayfabe, would say, well, Jesus Christ founded our church like every other church, so I don't know every other church that espouses true doctrine, right? That follows the creeds. Why would you say it was King Henry VIII? But yeah, no, I mean, the meme answer is always Arthur, because it is Arthur. Of course, it's Arthur, right?
Of course, it's King Arthur.
I told my priest that, and he like giggled. He was like, he had never heard that before. I'm like, it's clearly Arthur, and he was.
I am of the opinion King Arthur will return one day to save England.
Well, there's that statue, or I think it's in Cornwall, right? That's like waiting, right? Isn't that of Arthur? Yeah, I think there's an Arthur statue in Cornwall, right? Like he's waiting, right? Like he's just waiting. He will. I want
to point out the sword of Roland was recently stolen, and no one knows where it is.
Well, and I'm gonna tease you here, or I'm gonna chide you, because you and I, we still need to do a discussion of M.R. James. And there is an M.R. James ghost story all about a helmet of an Anglo-Saxon king that's designed to keep invaders away from England, and what happens when somebody foolishly removes it from its burial mound. So, clearly Arthur's real, right?
I want to say this before I go into my next point.
Yeah.
But there's very few things upset me as much as modern historians looking back at the past and seeing, like, what was the example of it was one of the British kings after the Tudors. or during the Tudors, who the king's dog ran up to him, and so everyone interpreted that as a sign that he was going to be the next king. And modern historians love to say this is clearly propaganda. It never happened. The Ukrainian woman who was just killed by that black guy on the train, her name was a Greek derivative. Her Ukrainian name was a derivative of the Greek name for the goddess of peace. They literally killed peace.
Well,
that is so on the nose that it imputes to historians to say it was manufactured.
Yeah, nominal determinism for the win. I totally agree.
I am 100% believer in nominal determinism.
What does it still mean something? Right? The martyrs are still with us. They live in Christ, as we shall live, as we do and shall live, Lord willing, in Christ. What does Charlie Kirk's name mean?
I don't know. What does it mean?
What does Charles mean? Charles is the French version of the word Karl. And what does Karl mean? It means
I don't know.
Free man. Okay. And wow. I believe it does. Yeah, free man. And then what does Kirk mean? Church.
I don't know.
It means church.
Wow. I'll say this is a topic I brought up on a recent podcast, but I'll say it again. When it comes to naming children, you should only choose names that would be fitting for a king. And this is why I have an issue with every time one of my sisters or cousins is pregnant and gonna have a kid, they name the kid as if it's going to be a baby forever.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It is a problem. There's a great line from 30 Rock, which is one of the last good sitcoms, where Liz Lemon is singing about adopting a kid and naming it, and Jack Donner gives her advice and says, choose names that could either be ships or English kings. As much as you wish it would, there would never be a President Xander.
Yeah.
Which is so true.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to my what?
What I was just gonna say, I mean, this is spooky season. It's Halloween time. I think by the time this drops, I will have done an epic breakdown on the Scarlet Thread Society with Pause about my argument for werewolf ontology.
Ooh.
I contend that every human is a werewolf, whether you want to admit it or not. You do wolf out at times. Some of us are brave enough to admit it, that we are werewolves. We hope and we confess that we are reformed werewolves and that we have reformed ourselves and are being reformed, but we will in this life probably always be werewolves. And you know what? It is what it is. How Rauru, be a werewolf, right? But just be the best werewolf you can be. But you know what's funny is because my first name means young wolf pup. And I have
nominal determinism for the win.
Nominal determinism, and my first name was commonly associated with Irish warriors who went out and started shit between different clans. So tell me that hasn't been the absolute blueprint for my personality throughout my life. So be careful what you name your kids. Don't name anyone Xander, please. Just call them Alexander, the actual.
Yes. And it's again for middle ground for women who want to name their kids something cute.
Nicknames.
Nicknames as shorteners, like Alexander, Alex, Reginald, Reggie. You can do. They're all middle grounds. I will say my name was going to be Leroy, or I think it was either Levi or Leroy. I can't remember. No, my name was going to be Levi, and my grandpa was going to call me Leroy Brown, the baddest man in the whole damn town.
Oh, that's a song.
It is. And on the day of my birth, my parents changed it and pranked my grandpa. And I'm kind of mad about that. Once I love the name Caleb, I think it's a great name.
Do you know what's hilarious?
What?
I didn't plan this at all. Although later historians will say that I planned this for propaganda purposes. But I'm not making this up. Literally before you hit record, before you hopped on the stream, I was talking to my wife about, I'm going to go record with Caleb. And I said to her, no irony, right? Just an honest statement to your wife. Yeah, you can really tell he's a later convert to Catholic because no Catholics name their kids Caleb.
So true.
And my wife, who was kind of has an inverse trajectory of you, as in she was raised Catholic and is now Protestant, was like, yeah, it's either one of the four evangelists or Tony because of St. Anthony.
It's so true.
It's
so true.
We didn't plan this, folks. Although again, later people will say we did. We did not plan that. Yeah.
Well, I am named to go a little personal lore. I am named Caleb off of the spy that Joshua sent into
Yeah,
Jericho
yeah,
because he always brought the good news, and that's why I like to credit my positive disposition as
probably.
being nominal determinism of the
Yeah,
name Caleb.
yeah.
Um,
Whereas I'm temperamental like a wolf, right? Like I can kind of, like somebody's like, I got a pet wolf. You want to pet him? And you're like, huh? And you're like, he don't bite none, and unless you look at him weird, and you're like, whoa. And then like I'm like that, right? Like usually I'm fine, but don't you gotta like give me a little bit, give me some kibble first, right? You let me know you're not gonna like hit me, like right. This is, I contend this is why I love dogs so much. And I think I know everyone says this, and I guess it's kind of, it feels a little like maybe shit lib coded, but it's fine. I do get along better with animals than people oftentimes, particularly dogs.
What's that Mark Twain quote? The more I learn about human nature, the more I love my dog.
Something like that. And I do think this is because the dog senses in me that I'm also, there's a little bit of I got that dog in me, just a little bit, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a little bit, right?
On continuing the King Arthur line of thought.
Yeah.
So King Arthur, real or unreal, is kind of a non-issue because he became real to the British people in a sense that he is tied deeply to y'all's history.
Well, he's an egregore.
Yes. We have in America, we have Daniel. Let's look at his names back. I always get mixed up. Daniel Boone, who was a real backwoodsman, hunter, explorer.
Well, what's funny about Daniel Boone is I was taught in high school by one of his distant ancestors.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Proven, same line of Boone family.
So he became like, as you all know, he became a folk hero, famous killing bears and fighting off whole native tribes, and he probably didn't do that.
Well, but also, have you heard of Liver Eating Johnson?
I have not.
Liver Eating Johnson. I can't remember which tribe he had the blood feud against. Crap, was it the Shoshone? Let me look it up. Okay, so Liver Eating Johnson was a real guy. Last name Johnson. I always forget his first name. Let's look it up here. But he waged John Jeremiah John. Okay, so if you've seen the movie Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford, this is the actual guy. Was John Jeremiah, aka Liver Eating Johnson. He lived to 75 years old, and he married a flathead. That's right. He married a lady of the Flathead tribe, and then she was killed by a Crow man. So a man of the Crow tribe, and he declared a lifelong blood feud against the Crow and would kill them and then eat their livers, supposedly, to give him their power.
Powerful.
Yes.
Powerful. Well, so like I said, we had Daniel Boone, right?
Yeah.
But then also, probably about, I think, like 16 years or so after Daniel Boone's death, we had Davy Crockett, who deliberately tried to play the role of David Boone and would accelerate his own stories and brag about things that didn't happen and became a politician. And became synonymous with the American frontier. So we have the real figure. So King Arthur, he fought off the Celts, to the King Arthur of Miss, Daniel Boone to Davy Crockett. There's a storyline between Rome's collapse, Europe, Christendom. So Rome's collapse, King Arthur, Europe, Christendom, America, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett. These are historical parallels that come from either a distance from one's home or a fracturing from one's home.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe this. I think this does tie back into the kind of the spooky supernatural underpinnings of America that we're talking about here, right? Because it's like we are like kind of the West, and if you look at what Europe has become, we really kind of might be the West now. And I say that with great sadness because I'm not saying Europe is lost, but what I'm saying is I don't know if they don't got that dog in them anymore, right? Like they don't. I feel like I have to start sounding like Theo Vaughn here. How many they don't got that dog in them, but they don't. They kind of just don't, right? Like the horrendousness of what has happened aside, I don't know if somebody's assassinating people like that in Europe, right? Like they just like even the left there is bad, but it feels like they've just been eaten by the muzzies, and they're just kind of like, right? Like they're just like grooming gangs now. It's like It's which is horrendous, right? By the way,
Yeah.
and is a real problem. But it's like they don't. There's something about America. The American left is so distinctly American, and the American right is just like the most American people are on the right.
Mhm.
Really, truly, right? Like anthropologically speaking, this is true, right? Like when you think about what is an American, right? You're like, I have a gun, I eat meat, I have a dog, right? Like I have a
Mhm.
knife, I have like these things, right? Meat eating, gun toting. You have a blade on you at all times. You have a
Mhm.
dog, right? That is trained to rip.
If I leave my house without a pocket knife, I feel naked.
Me too.
You
Me
have to have
too.
it on you. Two is
Me
one
too.
and one is none, as the Boy Scouts used to say.
True. Can I share one little quick story here? Since we're talking, I'm trying to steer us back to a little bit. This is all very good. I'm trying to make it a little bit more American themed because I don't want to. I want to keep true to what you called me on here to talk about. Liver eating Johnson. This guy was so fucking nuts. You want to hear this story?
Please.
Listen to this story. Okay, so he has this blood feud with the Crow because they killed his woman. Okay, his woman was Flathead. The Crow, blood enemies, sworn blood enemies of the Flathead, right? Like, there's still actually, I think there's still some beef between those two tribes today. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to talk to tribal members. I kind of have this feeling though, like I've heard that there's still some like little bit of a like, they're not like super keen on each other. Just take that for what you will. Um, okay. One tale ascribed to Johnson is that while on a foray over 500 miles in the winter to sell whiskey to his Flathead kin, sorry, he's traveling 500 miles to sell whiskey to the Indians. He was ambushed by a group of Blackfoot warriors. Okay, so this is like a third tribe, right? That like is not like is kind of in the mix, but isn't totally. The Blackfoot planned to sell him to the Crow, his mortal enemies. Okay. Johnson was stripped to the waist, tied with leather thongs, and put in a teepee with one guard. Bad mistake. Because this is a brutal American. Here we go. Johnson managed to break through the straps. He then knocked out the guard with a kick, took his knife, and scalped him. He escaped into the woods and fled to the cabin of Del Guay, his trapping partner, a journey of about 200 miles. So,
Oh, there's so many great American stories that I really I feel like America. How do I put this? Okay, because America's founding was only about what, maybe 110 years before mass industrialization and secularization,
yeah.
and America itself was kind of founded in a weird. And I pin all this on Thomas Jefferson has for the amount of secularism inside the American political system, that if America was founded, say, 15th century instead of 17th century, the the American law and stories would have been more ingrained in the American psyche and would have become like the Hercules was for the Romans or the Greeks,
Probably.
or
Yeah.
and that the fact that we industrialized so quickly after the frontiers period that led to the great stories, that the stories feel kind of lost to time in a sense,
Well, we were also weirdly industrializing while we still had a frontier.
Yes, was a weird mix of like Johnny Appleseed, while also we had,
it's like
the industrialization.
It's like Johnny Appleseed, and then here's a Gatling gun.
Yes, it's such a incredible mixture that's unprecedented.
Yeah, it's very weird. And this is why we're weird. And this is also why we are, I mean, so people on the left love to point out this is a bad thing. I just view it as a thing. We've talked a lot about, I mean, maybe this is a way to kind of harmonize our maybe deviation into the death penalty there for a little bit. But I think it connects back, and I knew it connected in some way, and I think this might be the way it connects. Is that Americans are brutal American. Like we are a violent culture. By the way, every culture is violent. So don't let anyone tell you that certain cultures aren't violent. We are violent in a distinct way. I would say that Americans, because of our recent industrialization, but also our recent frontier period, we remember that we are violent. And I think in this way, this makes us honest. I think we are honest in our violence. That doesn't mean we are good in our violence. Don't misquote me, anyone. I'm saying we are honest in our violence. And I think the current era that we find ourselves in, at least for those of us on the right, with Kirk's assassination, knife attacks on on trains, people getting set on fire on subways, and this kind of stuff. Shooting, protesters who ended up being pedophiles and stuff like that, right? We are honest about our violence in a way that other cultures are not. This is both dangerous and powerful. I'm not saying go eat the livers of your enemies. What I'm saying is maybe be capable of doing that if you have to. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe as best of a way as I can sum it up, is like, that's American dark whimsy right there. Recognize you got that dog in you. Be willing to do that, but don't do it unless you have to, right? Like, show restraint, but keep that spirit alive, right? Like, because you're gonna need it, right? Some things need to stay alive. So
absolutely. Hold on. Well, I just finished off my bottle of wine. It feels like a fitting time to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Doc, thank you so much for coming to sit by this fire with me in the woods. Thank you for making the trek out here to Kansas.
Well, it's bleeding Kansas, right? So it's like, I had to come up. We had to find a place that was, like in between our two locations. So,
but I fully believe this might be time to wrap it up, because I'm hearing branches snap in the woods, and I think our talk of Wendigos might have attracted one. So we might want to get out of here.
Well, I'll call up the Winchester brothers since we're in Kansas, and we'll be ready to go. Yeah.
Well, before we leave, maybe the Wendigo or Bigfoot would like to check out your podcast. Where can people find you at?
People can find me in a couple places. I'm slowly diversifying a little bit. So I do sometimes. I'm the token Protestant, and I say that with pride, but not too much pride. Enough pride, but not too much. I'm the token Protestant on Caleb's show. Obviously, I'm here doing token Protestant things. Hopefully, I've given a good accounting of my people's values. You can find me on YouTube. I have a very small show, meaning that I do maybe one episode a month. I've just because of just other commitments, called The Wandering Humanists. That's on YouTube. Check it out. It's a little bit more kind of like this unhinged schizo takes on history, literature. We even do some stuff on song lyrics.
I don't know if you would define it this way, but your show is a vibe show in a sense, and that you guys get on with a topic, but there's no telling where the conversation will go and where the vibe would take you.
It's very vibey. It's about as vibey as a millennial like myself can get without being a Gen Z. So yeah, it's vibe adjacent. It's vibe friendly. It's a vibe safe space. I also appear at least once a month over on the Scarlet Thread Society. That is Pause from Timeline Earth's sister show to Timeline Earth. Scarlet Thread Society. He runs his own stuff there, and then every once a month we have the Enchanted Office Hours, wherein Paz, who is my perpetual student, comes and knocks on my office door, and we talk about various things. In fact, I think by the time this episode drops, we'll have at least had one spooky season episode drop. That one is all about being haunted by the spirits of the living as opposed to the spirits of the dead. Yeah. And what happened by location, astral projection, being haunted by the living. So if people are interested, Scarlet Thread Society, for a meager, I think it's like, I forget, I should know actually. It's for a meager amount a month. You get access to that show. You get access to pauses.
I don't know how much it is, but I'll put it in context. I can afford it, and I'm broke as hell.
Likewise. So. Yeah. And then there's also things too. I'm going to shill for Pause here because he would have me do this. There's a book club every month. There's movie nights. There's all kinds of stuff. And I know that this episode here, or this stream here, will drop a little bit later, closer to Halloween, or maybe even on Halloween. So hopefully, in the month of October, I also hope to try to. I would like to Pause is open to letting me host at least one movie night. So I'd like to do that. I kind of want to do a werewolf movie because I really am like digging the werewolves lately. So Check it
Are
out.
you as pumped as I am for Robert Edgar's werewolf movie?
So incredibly pumped. You don't.
I
I
am
like.
so
I'm so pumped that when you bring it up, I get frustrated because I have to wait like a year to see it. So
dude. I just watched Nosferatu for the first time. It was my first Edgar's film, and I fucking loved it.
did you see that they've started production on Werewolf?
I have not.
Yeah, Aaron Taylor Joy. Yeah, Aaron Taylor Joy is going to be he's the werewolf. So
And I gotta say, Edgar's announced he's making a Christmas Carol film with Willem Dafoe as Scrooge.
yes.
And I don't know if there's any movie I am more pumped for than that.
Oh, I'm so excited. That's so good. Yeah.
If we can do a Christmas Carol story justice, because I'll argue this is my hot take. The top 3 Christmas Carol movies, the version of the story, are the George C. Scott one,
Yep.
which is incredible. The Muppet one.
I love the Muppet one
so
much.
good.
Yeah.
And I say Scrooge with Bill Murray is
Really?
a incredible version of the story.
Interesting.
Because I think that one, okay, when it comes to Scrooge, the most haunting scene should be when he sees his grave and he sees people fighting over his stuff.
Yes.
That should be incredibly haunting. And most movies, stories, we listen to the story, kind of like gloss over that. But in Scrooge, they put him in this casket, has us go into the incinerator to be cremated. That is as close as I've seen any modern film get to that, like the essence of that moment. So I would say Bill Murray's Scrooge is in my top 3 versions of the Christmas Carol.
I need to rewatch Scrooge. I think I maybe need to give it a second shot. I found it kind of but yeah.
I love it, but I can't hate Bill Murray.
I love Bill Murray. I mean, of course, yeah.
Bill Murray, I can't. He's incredible.
He's Peter Venkman, right? Of Ghostbusters, right? Like you got.
I've never actually seen Ghostbusters,
dude.
I know. I have a long list of films I missed out from being a Zoomer. Okay, there's a long list.
Watch Ghostbusters. It's in my top 5 favorite films of all time. I love that movie.
Is it bad that I've seen the 2016 female Ghostbusters and not the original?
That's a little bad, but
I know
there's always time to rectify your mistakes, and
it's because I love Dan Aykroyd. I buy his Crystal Skull vodka.
It's so good. I just had some for the first time the other day. Yeah, it's so good.
Isn't it great? I can't hate Dan Aykroyd. There's a Joe Rogan podcast with Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, that one with Joe. Yep.
And every once in a while, it cuts to Joe, and all you hear from Dan's mic is, "You hear that?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Is he doing blow? Is he doing blow on the podcast?" If he is, I don't care. It's Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd. Yeah, no, you need. Okay, so go in peace, my child. Sin no more. You need to go as part of your penance. You need to go see Ghostbusters. And so
yes,
that's
it's on my Halloween list of films to watch because I have a long list of Halloween movies to check
out. I mean, I guess I can out myself. I think I've said this on my show with Pause once. I am not joking when I say this. I have literally published in a peer-reviewed academic publishing from a publishing house, from a peer-reviewed academic publishing house about the Ghostbusters.
Wow, dork! That sounds incredible.
I'm a total.
That does sound nice.
It was a project I did with a colleague of mine back in grad school. About the religious background and history of the Ghostbusters movies.
Well, now I'm intrigued.
About I'll send it to you, but you got to watch the movie first because it gets into the history of spiritualism, and seances. And because Dan Aykroyd's family were involved pretty heavily in that, so and it clearly influenced the way he tells that story.
I don't know if there's any better. He might be the greatest American talker, and he can just go. Well,
it's crazy.
He can just go.
Crazy, sir. Do you know what's crazy? Is Aykroyd's Canadian.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
he feels so American.
Well, he starred in so many American movies, but if you hear him, he still has. Oh, well, like on the Joe Rogan show. Oh, Joe. Oh, yeah, it's only the best vodka, Joe. Oh,
he does have that
Ontario water. We got the Ontario water. The Herkimer Diamonds. Yeah.
I gotta say, I love Canadians. When I was in Canada,
they're amazing.
There's one of my favorite moments of my entire trip is I went to a Canadian liquor store and I bought some Glacier vodka.
Yeah.
And when I showed my ID, I was like stood in line, and I heard the Canadians talk to like the lady at the liquor store who talked to the regulars. They were very normal talking. There was no A or O or a boot.
Yeah.
But the moment you saw my ID and saw it was an American ID, she immediately started showing out more E about, and just like it felt like he was trying to give me the Canadian experience Americans expect.
Yeah,
and that's just such a great people. I love them to death.
I love Canadians. I'm from a region in America where sometimes I get confused for being for being a Canadian because of how I talk, which is funny. Just because we're so close to the border. I can't hate the Canadians because who would staff our hockey teams, right? Who would staff our NHL teams if we didn't have the Canadians, right?
They're so nice. Like so I have two great Canadian stories I love. I went to a random burger place in Edmonton, right? And when I parked, the guy inside saw my license plate was from Florida. And when I walked in, the first thing he said, he didn't say hello. That's what my order was. The first thing he said was, "Get out! You beat us in hockey." Like he was mad that the Tampa Bay Lightning beat him in hockey.
Can I make a controversial statement on your show here?
Go on ahead.
I fucking hate the Edmonton Oilers. So there you go. Suck it, Edmonton. Connor McDavid is annoying and sad. Despite being good at the game, he's sad. He's just so sad. He looks like a puppy dog who's gotten kicked. So just there.
So we started talking to me and this Canadian guy, and I don't watch hockey. I like hockey. I've seen it like once or twice, but I find it so fucking incredible that Florida's best sports team is ice hockey.
Yep. But I will say this too, though. Do you know why I hate the Oilers so much?
Why?
Because they're good. So it's pure jealousy.
And so I'm talking to this guy, and he starts saying, "You ever try? I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the fried bread they do."
Yeah.
And he said, "You want some for?" Yeah, he gave me some for free, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it out." And I ate one. I'm like, "This is incredible." And he looked over the counter and goes, "Why ain't you dipping it into jam?" I go, "It's fried bread. Would it be good in jam?" And I dipped it into strawberry jam, and I was like, my life changed. It was so good. And then another great story. When I got into Canada, I forgot to turn on international roaming on my GPS, so I had no service. And so I went to like a Canadian convenience store because they had free Wi-Fi. And so I went to this random Canadian old lady, right? This grandma. And I went, "Hey, I'm from the States. I need internet to figure out where I'm going next. Can you give me your address and enter it into this so I can get the free Wi-Fi to figure out where I'm going?" She goes, "Oh, no problem, dear." She typed it all in. I go, "Thank you so much." And I went to walk away, and she grabbed me by the arm and went, "Hold on. I have to see if it worked to make sure you know where you're going." And she stayed with me until I figured out where I was going.
Yeah, that's very Canadian.
They're so incredible. I love them. I'm close to tears now because I'm thinking about how tragic Canada's situation is regarding the Indians.
Yep.
They don't deserve it. They're too good. We have to help them.
We would be greeted as liberators. I really do think.
I fully believe that if Trump, I want it. I want it so bad. We have to save the Canadians from their government. They don't deserve it. They're too good.
Regime change now.
Yes. Anyone listening, if you get a chance to go to Canada or to the Northern Rockies in British Columbia, take it. Okay. So on my drive, I journaled the whole thing. Right, I wrote down. I did a whole Bellocs pass to Rome and the pass to Alaska, and I journaled the whole drive. And I uploaded each day as a different journal entry. And I wrote several times when I was driving to Dixie, like if I was, I am not an autistic individual. I may be autistic, but I'm not autistic. Okay. Yeah. So I would not attempt to write poetry about the beauty of Dixie. But when I got to the Northern Rockies, it was so beautiful. I was moved to compose my first poem. It was so. I mean, here, okay. I remember giving you this quick story. So I'm driving to the Northern Rockies. I am the only car on the road here. There's no wind because of the mountains. There's no mosquitoes. There are no bugs. And I parked my car because I was falling asleep on the road because I couldn't sleep. I was so tired I was falling asleep. So I pulled off to the side. It was so quiet. It felt like adoration. And I swear to God, I could hear the blood rushing through my veins.
Yeah.
It was so quiet and serene. I could hear my heartbeat. I could hear the blood rushing. I'll say it. As much as I love America, there is nowhere more beautiful than the Northern Rockies of British Columbia.
You heard it here, folks. I've actually never been up to that part of BC, so I don't know. But yeah, I believe
you got to try it, man. You got to go up there. It is so serene and beautiful, and the people are so great.
A long day. I could do it in a long day's drive. Yeah.
take a weekend and just go up there, man. I can't recommend it enough. I can't afford it, but I want to fly out there for a week and to spend the vacation going up there. I met a guy. He was biking through all of British Columbia, and he had a tent in his backpack, and he would just pull off to the side by the river and camp for the night, and then get up and bike the next day. And that just sounds incredible.
Yeah,
that sounds so much fun.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful place and beautiful people. I like Canada.
Yes, so good. Oh, so much. God. I love them. I love the Canadians so much.
Yep. I work with one. They're good people. Yeah.
So
that's Canadian. Yeah.
I mean, I love the South. I love Florida. Sadly, we don't have any good closness or connection to Canadians.
Except hockey.
Except for hockey. Hockey is such a I would never get over it how good the Tampa Bay Lightning is.
Well, Tampa Bay
makes no sense.
You guys, Yanni Gourde this season is going to be back at the Lightning. So he was up in Seattle for a bit, and now he's back in the Lightning, which is where he really cut his teeth. So
I got to get into hockey. I'm going to
enjoy having Gourde. I like Gourde. He's a good player.
Okay, listen, for anyone listening, okay, maybe you're like me and want to get into sports, but just can't sit down for the attention span, or you weren't raised on sports. Like my dad never watched football. He did when I was my dad never watched sports because when I was younger, he would get so mad about his team losing, his whole weekend would be ruined, so he stopped watching sports.
Yeah.
And so maybe you're like me and never really grew up watching sports or have any real connection to sports, but you want to get into sports there is something to be said about the locality of tailgating and loving your local team, despite no matter how good or bad they are, it's your local team, so you love them anyway.
And some of us perhaps even like teams that aren't so local. And you can have that fun conversation.
But perhaps, so here's how I've
perhaps some of us are planning on this season showing up to a game with opposing jerseys on with your wife, and then you're going to take some selfies, because as much as I like the Kraken, I also like the Sharks quite a bit. So yeah, neither of which are particularly great teams, but that's okay. I enjoy them. Yeah. But the Lightning are good, man. I think they're going to have a pretty decent season. I mean, I think the Panthers might go all the way again, but who knows, right? Who knows?
So anyone listening, if you want a tip for how to get yourself invested in sports, this is how I got really into the Super Bowl last year, is I bet money on it.
Gambling, everyone.
Gambling is the surest way to make sure you're invested. I never paid more attention to a football game in my life. I don't care about football, but I guarantee you I watched every play and I was Googling every single rule and flag to understand the Super Bowl because I had bet money on it. I knew nothing going in. I just bet $20 on a player because I'm like, that's a cool name, and I want to be invested. And say what you want about gambling for its virtues and vices and all its other downsides and upsides. There's no better way to get yourself more invested in a sporting event than gambling.
I mean, maybe. I don't even know if I'm not gonna attach my name to that statement because I have some feelings about gambling. But yeah, okay. I mean,
gambling is one I'm torn on because I can't rationally argue how it's not a sin to gamble, but it doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like a sin.
It's necessarily inherently sinful. The problem is I have some family history of people who've gambled their way into serious problems. So for me, it's like if you're raised by alcoholics, you just don't drink. For me, it's like I just don't gamble because I've seen what it does to people. So,
that is fair. I
don't necessarily begrudge other people, but my stance on gambling is always, it's a tax on stupid people.
Yes. I will say I am against the gambling apps and which is so normalized and advertised. My preferred method of gambling would be finding an old guy at the Knights of Columbus who is a part-time bookie and taking bets with him. That is much more my speed than trying to go to an app or an actual bookie.
I like, horse racing can be fun. I mean, I
want to go to horse racing.
Yeah, going to a track and actually seeing, I guess in that case, I would maybe feel better about it because you're actually even as an audience member, you're still sort of passively participating in the horse racing event, and that you're willing to go see it, and then you maybe get to go down and see the horses and see the jockeys, and like that kind of feels a little bit like,
And I have a bad history with gambling. I went to a casino once. Okay, I started with $100, right, on a blackjack table. I got up to $300, and I left with 50 cents.
Yeah, this says something about, I think, Catholic versus Protestant time preference, but that's a topic for another day.
That's a whole conversation to be had
yeah.
about the gambling, which we might want to have on a Discord and not necessarily on a podcast. But
it's probably not as interesting on a podcast. Yeah.
But again, this is the whole conversation. But when it comes to gambling, gambling to me is in a similar vein to the death penalty, in which I am so torn on it. Because at the same time, it does feel, in a sense, a waste of money or sinful in a sense. But at the same time, it fully engages you in the event, you know? And there is something to be said for that. But at the same time, it is a
well,
lack of stewardship, I guess.
Yeah, you can see that. I mean, if I can I'm not making an argument for or against gambling here, because again, I have a personal feeling about it that I don't necessarily universalize into some theological statement. I just have a personal dislike of it. But I would say I do hear what you're saying about, putting money down on something engages you more into it.
Yeah.
And is that not kind of what tithing does, maybe? Right?
Ooh,
like when we tithe, we become charitable and we put our money down. We're willing to say, like, I'm willing. I'm going to engage now more fully in.
There is something to be said for the Protestant church in which you feel engaged and maybe even entitled to an explanation of where your money is going.
Yeah.
Because of your ties. And that does fully engage you in the church life because it's your money on the line.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing to think about for a while.
Yeah. I'm not trying to make some sort of Protestant supremacist argument. I'm just saying, like, for me as a Protestant, I think of like that idea of, well, you got some skin in the game, right? Like, just like whether it's on a blackjack table, a Super Bowl, or like, I'm going to donate to this, our mission for, I don't know, homelessness, something outreach, or even fixing the church roof, paying your clergymen. What a concept. They need to be paid, like heating the building and crazy things like this. So, yeah.
Well, Doc, thank you so much for sitting by this campfire with me. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been, again, every once in a while I go to a phase where I'm like, man, why am I podcasting? This is so much time and effort and work. But every once in a while I have you on, or I talk to somebody and I'm like, this is why I podcast, because it's so much fun to have these kind of conversations. And I'll say it, podcasting has kind of, in America at least, has replaced the European pub conversation.
Yes.
And those are good. We don't really have, if say America, we don't have a pub culture. The closest I could argue for a pub culture in America would be everyone going to Hooters after work.
Sports bar. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
And that's not the same thing.
No.
And so the podcasting has kind of taken that vein, and I don't know if that's good or bad because it's broadcasted. But regardless,
But how many people are watching?
You want to talk about podcasts?
I always tell myself, but how many people are really watching?
Yes. And this is weird to me. You know what's weird? My biggest audience is Americans, obviously. You know what my second biggest audience is? From what country? Belgium.
Huh.
I can't explain that one. I have no connection to Belgium. I don't think I've mentioned Belgium outside of referencing how the second largest country of my fans or listeners are from Belgium.
Groetjes aan de Belgen, I guess. I'll say hoi hoi. Yeah. We houden van jullie. I don't know. We love you. I guess that's what I'll say to your at least to your Flemish speaking Belgian viewers.
It's so, I know, right? It makes zero sense. I don't know how I attracted a Belgian audience, but I have at least 30% of my audience, I believe, is from Belgium.
Well, they're all multilingual, and so they speak really good English, and so that makes sense. And it's a Catholic country, so that makes sense.
I mean, I love Louvain. I love the school of Louvain up there where Fountain Scene went.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there, but it's so funny to me.
It is, yeah. It's in Belgium, huh? Well, it's a cool place.
If anyone has YouTube, you can go to your YouTube and you can go to your analytics and see where your listeners are from, and that is a fun thing to do every once in a while.
Huh, Belgium. Cool. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, what did Jeremy Clarkson say about Belgium, right? It was a country invented so so England and Germany could settle their differences, right? Isn't that what they? That what he said about
It's a
Belgium?
great
So,
line.
in any case,
Well, Doc, thank you so much for coming on. You remind me why I enjoy podcasting.
that makes me happy to hear. I hope people enjoy this rant and ramble. But thanks for having us on for so long. Normally there's a time limit, but I mean, I'll just go as long as you want. So cut me off right now, and you do your thing.
This has been great. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this Halloween special as it's going on. This should be hour 2 or hour 3, depending on where I upload the other episodes. I'm not positive what the next episode will be because I haven't recorded it yet. So, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Enjoy your spooky night. God loves you. Remember, the core VeggieTales. God made you special, and he loves you very much. Have a good night.
Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells.